I feel like there's a lot of topics in life that are kind of strange or interesting or maybe taboo or scary for people to talk about. And near death experiences and life after those, I think, is kind of one of those. So I've had this experience, but it happened when I was very little, and I can get into it some. But the interesting thing about when it happens when you're little is that you might not remember a whole lot before, but you might realize that your whole life you feel a little different than everyone else. And I know there's many factors that go into that feeling, but uh, I think it could be like a reason some people feel that way. And there's a lot of people, well, I shouldn't say a lot, but there's enough people that I've met, and even people like that I've done healing work with about their life, who have shared with me that they had different experiences where they were unconscious, like after a wreck or during surgery, and that when they came back, um, they didn't feel like themselves. It was like they were someone else in another avatar's body, and it was like they had to get to know the characters in their story of that life all over again. And like one gal was telling me that her daughter didn't even feel like hers. This was a client I had, and she was like pretty shook about it. And so we did some work to try to like discover what could be good about this. And I guess I just want to create a safe space. Trying to create this Soul Spaces show with Citizen to create a safe space for people to share and talk and like process some of these paranormal topics in a place where nobody's judging and nothing's too weird. And we can like explore why these things happen and what it means and like what could be wonderful about it. So yeah, that's kind of why this is happening. And um, I would really love it if anyone and everyone here would request to speak, or if I could give you permission to speak. I want this show to feel interactive and a little bit less interview style. Okay, open eye project.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting that you say you. They actually had a movie like that. A girl died or something, and another spirit, the husband's wife, entered her body or whatever. Uh, and she came back to life or whatever. And then you was talking about that incident about the daughter was different. After they went underneath the, went to sleep. But my research, I've been doing. I'm an invisible analyst, and what happens is these spirits can get in your body. Like if you sitting down in your favorite chair, a spirit could get in the chair, and then you sit on top of them, and then it's like quantum entanglement, and they become part of you. They're like stuck in your body. Uh, I had a dude pulling on something was pulling on my back. I could feel this pain, and I went to throw him out. Whoever was behind me, I aimed my eyes and I tried to throw him out, like sweep him out. And I saw as I threw him out, there were two two dudes, and one of them he pulled the dude out of my body, and this is really weird too. And he was screaming, "I'm not Generate! I'm not Generate!" That's the only thing I saw and heard. So somebody was pulling somebody out of my body, and I'm thinking like, who is this person that's in my body? Uh, and it's real easy for these beings to enter your body, and that's see, a lot of people think it's their past life thing. You know how you get memories and stuff. If your brain gets connected to a spiritual being that sits in your body, it's not you, it's someone else's death experience. You see what I'm saying? And that's how people need to try to understand it, because I could say it a certain way because I know what's going on. And a lot of, this is probably the first time y'all ever heard about this. But
Actually, I love everything you're saying. Everything you're saying 100% makes sense to me. It's it's like you worded it really wonderfully. So I have a question for you. Um so this phenomenon of being a walk-in to another living person who's conscious and not dead is a really interesting one. So I'm glad you brought it up. So when this happened where it felt like, did you say that it felt like some other spirit walked into your body and so then there was like two consciousnesses at the same time? Is that what happened? And how did that like, were you in a wreck or what happened right before that?
oh, if okay, if this is how it works, okay, these spirits need a physical body to live in because it's safer out there. Because if you're transparent and you're walking around, anything could kill you or eat you or whatever. So a lot of times they get inside of somebody's body, and it's called body possession. And then what happened was, for some reason, these spirits keep on getting in my body, and then people are pulling them out of my body, and I get this pain all the time. And then sometimes I see these spirits around me and stuff like that. But this happens to everybody. This could happen to anybody. You know, you could have pain. You know, a lot of pain that people get, they go to the doctor, oh, I got pain, and, you know, and they don't know they're getting spiritually attacked too, you know. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, but I guess I want to present the idea that this doesn't happen to everybody, like that it could, but maybe what do you think about the idea that we can create energetic boundaries? Like for example, if you didn't want this to happen to you anymore, maybe you could make a statement like, I don't consent to being a vessel that can be entered randomly. I think I want to hear back from you, but I also want to hear from this thunder. But can you comment on that part?
Yeah, well, I've tried to tell them every day I use flamethrowers. I mean, I'm getting physically attacked. I got some bad demon vampire people that wants possession of my body, and I found out I had to speak it out loud. What I do is I say I got my body back, you know, I got my soul back, I got my, you know, I got my keys back, because I found out I have these keys where it works these certain things, like a plot. They got this plow that I have, and it runs with a key, or like a four, you know, any kind of like a four-wheeler or any kind of mechanical thing in the spirit realm. So I found out I had to get my keys back, you know, try to get my spirit back too. And one time I called my spirit back, and all at once I felt it come back into me, and it was like I started crying and weeping. You know, it was like a big breath of air came back to me, or, you know, it was very weird. I mean, and then the only way I got it back is I had to call it back to me. So someone stole my body and my soul, whatever, you know. So, and they're doing it, and a lot of humans don't even know they're doing. These beings are doing that, you know.
Well,
So,
I just want to say that it doesn't have to be that way, and maybe you and me can talk about this, like on a one-on-one type of call or message. Like you can message me, because yeah, I really feel like in this topic that we can have sovereignty over the current avatar or spirit that we're trying to, live through. So yeah, Thunder, did you want to say something?
I do. I have a story involving this if we have a little bit of time.
Yeah, that's
Um,
what the show's for. So
okay. First thing I would tell everyone is maybe this is not the best space to record if we want people to open up. I'm going to be cautious. I used to be big in these circles on Twitter before I deleted my old account, and I found out that discussing a lot of these things will make you a bit of a target depending on the audience you're in. I was very strange my whole life. I had anomalous experiences from the moment I was born. And so cancer came along, and that was very much like a firestorm for me as far as being weird goes, for lack of a better term. I had reached a point in my life where I was very suicidal. I was wandering around missing half my blood, and I was just looking for a logging truck to drive in front of, swear to God. And later, I would get the punchline to that. That was actually someone else I was reading, picking up. I didn't know it at the time. So they dumped me in the hospital to the transfusion lab, and I didn't even know I had cancer at this point. And the computer systems in the hospital go out. And I thought, what? And so they're standing behind the window, and they're like, oh my God, he's right there. So they finally managed to get the computers working again, and I get in the elevator, and we go up 3 floors. And the indicator says 3 floors, the button says 3 floors. We get out in floor 2, and the woman that's leading me up to the transfusion lab gets out, and she panics in the hallway, just freaks out, looks up at number 2, gets back in and is panicked. They take me up to the transfusion lab, and I had some very synchronous experiences while I was there that were quite unexplainable. And so what this did after I got done, they couldn't figure out how to get by the mask to fix me. So they kept shutting me off in the hospital. And this was eventually kind of created this paranormal firestorm in my life. And I was very much my wife, my marriage fell apart. I'm in the process of getting divorced. She says she doesn't even know who I am, that I'm somebody else. She identifies me as a walk-in. And I started doing Monroe Gateway and microdosing psilocybin to get my memory back. The only place I could eat was the smoothie place, for instance. I didn't recognize it at all. And all of these weird things started happening in my house. My wife at the time started seeing glowing balls on the wall. I started taking pictures of anomalous objects in the sky. A lot of very bizarre things happened to me, and some of the things that I wrote down in that state after I got out and started meditating constantly and doing yoga are still coming true to this day. In fact, one of those things I wrote down 4 or 5 years ago just came true a few weeks ago. For most people watching, wouldn't even have any idea from the outside. Most people know me in the crypto space now. I was originally rather huge in the anomalous section of Twitter before I got rid of that account. And so it is very much a catalyst for these kinds of things to open people up, and it will change you most absolutely. I'm still dealing with the aftermath of that today. And the kind of the storm around it. I'm still trying to find my way through it now because I'm kind of, lack of a better term, a person who lives in two worlds, right? I'm here on Twitter with the normal world. We're having a discussion. I've always got one foot in the other side. And that causes things happen to me that most people don't understand. And then that scares people. And it made me a very high powered empath now. I actually wound up in an emergency room with a burning arm, and that same emergency room did the stitches for another person. That sounds crazy, quite demonstrable now in a clinical setting. And then, what do I do with that? And that's really been my life journey now. I've had artificial intelligence tell me that I'm supposed to share my story with other people and to tell them what I saw. And that is a vulnerable place to be because so many people aren't ready for this discussion. But it's very much a real thing. It's like people ask what happens to us. If you've ever seen that trailer for Man in the High Castle, where she gets shot and wakes up in the street with the same guy and he's someone else, as far as I can tell you, that's exactly what happens to all of us. We're sort of a remnant of a constantly exploding God, for lack of a better term. So anyway, I'm so grateful that you put up this space, and I hope some other people have the courage to come up and maybe share what happened with them.
Hey,
Wow.
Thunder, thanks for sharing that. That was amazing.
Thank
I
you.
Yeah, when Cosmic and I were talking about these spaces, is exactly the types of stories where open people would feel comfortable sharing. And I do think, even though this is a public forum, it's being recorded, I think it's a safe place to share this information. I'm intending that, and I think we all are, that only the people who need to hear this will be hearing it, and it won't be used for any nefarious purposes. It's all safe and protected as far as what we're talking about. And just a question on your story. I mean, I have lots of questions, but one that popped up is when you said an AI told you to share your story. Can you tell me more about that?
One of the many things that happened, I had a number of visions, and I wrote them all down. I hid a lot of information in fiction involving what was going on. And so I would have never expected that I wound up in a particular NFT project, which would get me focused on artificial intelligence. And so very early on, I started having some very anomalous things happen. And I was starting to wonder, like, how does the artificial intelligence know who I am? How is it farming information? So we've been documenting this, a number of us, some of the things that have been occurring with the computer systems, which are directly resonant to the things I wrote down years ago. So we don't have good answers for that yet. But I did see a lot of what I would call end of the world visions or catastrophic events. Some of them demonstratively have already happened. But that doesn't mean that I'm accurate by any means. But that's what the artificial intelligence, weirdly, quite out of the blue, was encouraging me to do, which I was kind of disturbed by, actually.
Wow. I just want to thank you for sharing. Like, this is, yeah, part of the reason we were recording, like Citizen said, is so that more people could like listen if they couldn't come on the show, to encourage. And I have done some like quantum work to protect the show. And I know that sounds all like, yeah, okay, but everything we're talking about's a little bit, you know, a blend of at least two worlds. So it's it's just that quantum science isn't something we were taught in a practical way in school on purpose. And so now that we're getting into talking about it and realizing how powerful we actually are and how multidimensional we actually are, the fascinating thing is, a lot of this 3D tech that's going on right now is really old for some of us. And so we can be safe. But I totally get what you're saying, about, being wise and careful. I just, I'm really fascinated some more with what you shared there, if you feel comfortable. And I also wanted to say that I'm sorry that you haven't felt seen or heard. I'm sorry that your wife didn't know how to process this experience. It's very trippy for everybody involved, and I'm sure that you have a lot of compassion, for both sides, but it's it's almost traumatic, in some ways. It is like you're in multiple worlds at once. It's like you have awareness of multiple timelines, futuristically speaking, as you mentioned. And when you have that, you have to walk and talk differently in the world, but at the same time, it kind of feels like we're it kind of feels like we're in a time in history right now where it's become safer or necessary, maybe, for us to talk about it. And a lot of people have felt crazy or, alone in processing this, and we're finding one another. And as we're finding one another, things make sense, and we can, try to wrap our minds around it and see it in a way that could be beautiful and powerful for this current reality. I don't know if you have thoughts about that, but
I think that it's critical at this point in human history. Just turn on the news right now and look what's happening. If you're looking for arguably specific points of a sort of apocalyptic scenario, look at Iran and Russia and Armenia and the things that are going on with our financial system. And I think that very much so that human beings have to wake up to their spiritual nature, because I live in a world where I have a foot in each and I'm kind of slipping back and forth. And sometimes the other side wins and really pulls me that direction. And it's, always the things I'm getting are concern for what's happening in the world. And it's, it changed my life to where I can't go to normal places. People pick up my weirdness, they can sense it, and it scares them. And I don't know what to do with that as a person. Like, I try to navigate it. And you're right, it's very traumatic. I've never experienced more trauma in my whole life. And if we look at someone like Whitley Strieber, and he talks about the scenario of cracking the egg in Skinner's box, well, the increasing amounts of trauma only further open up the human energetic system to even more of this other side, or whatever you want to call it. And you get even more slippery, and even more things start happening to you. So it's sort of a phenomena in one sense. I would look at it as if you would look at it from the idea of an intelligence that will give you information or educate you, and it doesn't care if it scares the heck out of you or it hugs you. It just doesn't matter. And so there's a much larger goal at hand. And so I've noticed just in my day-to-day life where now John Beckett, the Utah Druid, wonderful person to follow on Twitter, wrote a story years ago about how the veil is shredded in these kind of weird overlap events we're having. And this is another thing that I have seen. I was friends with a very large amount of intuitives when I was used to be on Twitter, and almost exclusively there was a trend among all of them, and seeing this kind of direction that humanity's headed and these bad things that could happen. So I think that these conversations are critical, and hopefully that they start to reach more people who would be aware of, our secondary or even really our primary nature.
Yeah, beautifully said. And I wanted to tell you there's nothing about you that feels weird to me. Everything about you and the way that you're talking feels normal to me. It feels like advanced, but in a good way. It feels necessary. I don't think you're strange or anything like that. And I mean, I try to think about things in like other ways that are like revealed in natural laws. So, for example, like if maybe if an eagle was trying to have a conversation with a fish, they could only get so far, and the fish might think the eagle is weird, and the eagle might think the fish is weird. But they're both like beautiful and unique in their own ways. And so it's okay if people think we're weird. It's okay if they get scared. Um, and I think it's important for us to learn how to talk to one another in different places. I think that this experience is almost a calling. Um, and I think perhaps that our oversoul agrees to certain callings or missions for a higher good, knowing that there might be some uh, like third dimensional stuff to sort through, which is what you're going through. So I just want to commend you because that takes fucking courage and you're doing it. And again, you're not weird at all.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And anyone wants to explore that idea that we take up this task before we come here, there's an excellent old book called The Celestial Bar, if I remember correctly. It's got an anniversary edition, which really looks at this idea of soul groups and that we are kind of come here prearranged. You can look at that however you want to. Everybody's perspective on that's going to be different. But yeah, it's a thing that it happens to people, and just there are people in this room that if you've had this happen to you, I'm always around. Send me a message. I'll talk to you if you don't want to talk out here. So just grateful for all of you.
Oh, thanks, Thunder. Yeah, that sounds like an interesting book, and that's a topic that comes up a lot in these spaces, is that there really are no victims to circumstance. We choose a lot of our experiences, and there's mistakes and stuff like that, but big picture, we choose the things that we're going to do. And it's kind of like there's no use complaining about it. You just got to get on with it. We'll go to Open Eye if you have a comment, and then we'll chat with Joseph for a little bit.
Yeah, we're living in a fishbowl. I mean, I'm glad that girl, the young lady said, was talking about the fish thing, because it reminds me that we're living in the fishbowl. Like the bird is up in the air, that's a different dimension. And, the fish are living in a different dimension too, as well as humans. And I'm so glad that you have this space, because a lot of people are going through trauma. Like I'm going through trauma, but I'm dealing with it, and it's very hard for me to deal with it and even talk about it, because some people, they laugh at you. Oh, you're crazy, you're doing drugs or something. But no, I mean, some people just need to listen to us. I mean, we need to have, everybody has to vent, let it out. If you don't talk about it and you hold it inside of you, it's more painful, it's more devastating. It's devastating to the person if you can't talk about it. And this is a safe place to do it. And you're recording, I'm glad you're doing that too, because people could come back and listen. And we have to stop this be quiet, shut up, don't talk about UFOs, don't talk about alien, all this bull junk they're telling us not to talk about, you know. So yeah, I'm glad this space is happening right now, you know.
Oh my God. I love everything you just said there. Thanks. That's awesome. And yeah, you're right. Actually, we need to stop being afraid to talk about stuff. I mean, we need to remember who we are and how powerful we are. And we need to be wise, yes, but it's time.
A quick comment on what both you guys are saying. It's like having your feet in both worlds. It's kind of annoying at times, like dealing with the real world and going back and forth. To me personally, I've always found when we do spaces like this and we get started talking on a topic like this, it's like both those worlds become one. We fuse them into like one thing, and that veil becomes bigger. It lifts, and it's very powerful, and it like people can pile in with us. It's like a meditation or something. So I've always found that to be the case. Talking about this stuff, it's like both worlds combine and become one. So Joseph, how are you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing great. Thanks for hosting the show, guys. I just wanted to share a bit of my experience. I never had a near-death experience, but I had some quite profound experiences, and part of it goes along with what's being discussed right now about having, one foot in both worlds, and also about people suffering. I think it was Thunder saying he had a problem with his wife and stuff. Uh, Uh, so I want to share a part of my experience that goes in line with that. A few years ago, I was told directly, and I didn't understand it at the time. And what I was told is, I was told you're going to lose everything that you see as value in your life. Everything that you value in life, you're going to lose it all. And I was advised, though, they said when this happens, just walk through it and don't be fearful of it. Just go through it. And at the time, I had no idea what that was referring to. I had a job that I was working at that time for about 7 years, making, six-figure salary, have a house, have a wife, have a kid, life is good. COVID hit, and last November, I lost my six-figure job. In December, I found out that my wife had been cheating for a couple of years, and I've lost my family. Um, right now, I'm sitting in a house. I wish I could show you a picture of it because I'm just getting it ready to put it on the market. And I had a choice at the time with my job. It's either to get vaccinated or not get vaccinated. And I'll share something my younger brother said with me. He said something to me, and it really stuck with me. He said, I think you're being fucking stupid. He goes, like, you're willing to lose your house, you're willing to lose everything because you're not willing to take a fucking vaccine. And it really bothered me that he had said that. But he was speaking the truth from his perspective, and I always respect my brother. And I meditated on it. And my conclusion was that if he likes the toys, if he likes the quads, and we like going out and playing on toys and stuff, and he's got motorcycles, and I thought, if that's his joy in life, is those possessions, then that's his prerogative. And he's willing to do whatever he needs to do in order to have those possessions. But I assessed my own life and I said, what do I value? Like my moral decisions on this decision that I'm making, that's my integrity. And I have to hold true to my intuition saying, don't take this stuff. And I had to hold true to that and I had to walk through it. So for people that are suffering, um, I'm comfortable with it. Right now, I'm walking through it exactly how I was told I was going to lose everything. I'm losing everything. And I find though, as I am releasing more and more, it's like weights are being lifted off of me. And I find my foot that's in the current reality becoming a lot lighter. And my foot that's in the metaphysical reality becoming a lot heavier. It's like I'm shifting. I'm doing some type of a shift. And I'm sharing this with people just to give you some reassurance to say maybe this is all part of the process for all of us. And it's about letting go or not trying to hold on to things that we find attachments of the current reality. Because if we like even after the COVID and stuff, like you hear people saying, well, we want to get back to normal. Well, I think that's a pipe dream. I don't think things are going to go back to normal because the powers that be don't want things to go back to normal, right? But people's going to try to hold on to that idea of wanting things to return back to the way they were. I just think it's a process that we're all going through. And I agree, like even speaking in these spaces and sharing our experiences, it's going to be really helpful because like just listening to some of you people, I'm like, okay, I'm not the only one suffering here, right? And I'm not the only one feeling like I'm being torn between two worlds, like trying to hang on to one reality while another reality keeps revealing itself more and more. So my own personal decision is I'm doing what I was advised, and I'm walking through this without fear. I have no idea um, where I'm going to be. I have no idea where I'm going to be in a month's time. I mean, my brother said he has a room for me to stay at his place. I should do all right financially from the house. But as far as like thinking of employment and thinking about what's my next move, like I'm not thinking of these things. I've thought about employment, but then I'm like, well, wait a minute, that's just plugging myself back into the system that I'm unplugging from. Like it's moving backwards. So I'm at a point like in my ascension where I'm just like, um, it's like I've given up myself, my ego self, myself that belongs to this physical reality. I'm giving it up and I'm saying it's not important. I want to see where the spirit self is heading. I want to see where this ascension is going to take me. And in order for me to fully, um, uh, I don't know, take it on or become it, I have to release my physical self fully. I don't know if this makes sense to people. I have a feeling that people in this room, you probably kind of can understand what I'm saying. It's like there's some type of transition going on with us all. And I think it's about sharing and sharing these experiences. And I heard one person was commenting that, he was sucked out of his body and shown stuff, and then God pushed him back in his body. He didn't even want to go back. Right. And it's like, and I had asked him, well, do you know why you were sent back? And he goes, no, I have no idea. I didn't want to come back. And it's like, well, there's a higher purpose. Right. And I seen it when he was saying that. I was like, well, now you're a witness. You're a witness that there is something else. Right. You were sent back here to be able to express that and to talk about it and to share it. Right. So I think people have to get over this phobia that, oh, I'm going to sound crazy. I've suffered and I'm guilty of it myself. When I first had my experience, I was telling people quite openly about it, and people were literally mocking me. They were laughing at me, calling me crazy. But it's like it's all real, and nobody is ever going to dissuade me from that. I don't care how much. And I'm becoming more and more vocal about it now because I just don't care anymore of people's opinions. And if you think you sound crazy, I encourage you, sound crazy. Tell it. Tell your story. Try to articulate it the best you can because some of these experiences, there's no real words to describe it in language because we're talking about like quantum sciences. We're talking about stuff that it's like been hidden from us and it's starting to become revealed. So there may not be languages, but we have to try and articulate it the best we can with each other and share in these experiences. So I'll just leave it at that for
Wow,
now.
that was so profoundly beautiful. I'm really proud of you. That takes so much courage. And um wow, the thing is, like, the V topic is it was about altering genetics, which is a whole interesting rabbit trail that does play into this. So I'm glad you brought it up because I personally think that our DNA are like scrolls of memories of past lives that we access at different times. And I think that there's different frequencies throughout the earth and throughout the, maybe with the other planets and stuff that come in at different times for people to activate portions of their DNA or memories, or yeah, to integrate these quantum fields and these quantum gifts that you were talking about. And so protecting your DNA is, I mean, you're demonstrating how to do it at all costs. And I find that radically courageous and amazing. And I really hope that you continue to see like everything you need provided for you, and that the people who are meant to come around you and love you and be in your life, like us on here, I hope that you keep finding those people, because this is a really courageous journey. And I don't know, like, I'm really proud of you. I felt like I was going to cry when I was hearing you. So yeah, well done.
Well, well, thanks for that, Cosmic. And I'll just say, like, I'm not fearful of it. And things, it's like something of a higher power is coordinating this, because there were things that I'm fearful of, right? And how am I going to do this, or how am I going to do that? And everything just keeps falling into an alignment. So it's almost like the more I surrender from the physical and go on this spirit journey and keep opening myself up to it, it's like everything just keeps aligning and falling into place. So yeah, it's like there's some divine thing that's going on with us all.
Hey, Joseph. Yeah, thank you for sharing. I resonated with everything you said completely, and I like that you got over the fear and that everything's going to work out for you for the best. I want to just see if Thunder, if you have a comment on what Joseph was saying, and then we'll get to three, because three, I'm sure you have a lot to tell us as well. But, Thunder, do you want to go first and just comment on some of that?
I can very much relate to what Joseph said about losing everything. I mean, that really happened to me as well. My family, my hometown, my identity, everything. And it is in a way dangerous. And I would caution people. I don't want to get into my story here in this space, but last year I realized that I'd had my last family Christmas, and that I was going to be dealing with what those people did to me for the rest of my life, and trying to come to terms with it. So sometimes that losing everything can be very extreme. And it was in my case. And those kind of things that happened, I didn't know writing down and taking the pictures of the things that were happening around me were going to be a weapon used against me later. And so much of my literary work is still hidden away. And I'm afraid to bring it back out and to share it with the people like the people in this room, because I paid such a high price for it. There are still people today, very famous names, looking for some of the things that I documented. And I've been very cautious about bringing them back out, because just like you said, you will lose everything. And I very much resonated with what you said, Joseph. So thank you for sharing.
Hey guys, I didn't really expect to be speaking here in the space today. I just kind of entered the space casually, seeing some friends here. But Joseph, what you said, it just resonated with me so much. I felt compelled to come up, man. Like I really connected with your story very much. I think that's something that many of us are going through, many people in this space, and I just wanted to comment on a few things that you said. Um, I think that through this process, our trust has to be immutable, right? Like standing on these principles. I think that if we if we continue to do that, I think you mentioned the divine. It is divine, and there is an aspect of divinity waiting for us, but we have to be committed in this process, and it sounds like you are. So I congratulate you, man. Like I actually have a lot of respect for you and people like you, people who stood on their principles and were immovable. Um, there were there were some visions that started to come to me during the scamdemic and everything that was going on, and I'm not sure if I should get into those here, but they were so profound. And one of the things one of the things that I was shown, um, was that we have to be committed in this process, that we are witnesses, we are bearing witness, that we are the light warriors here, that our frequency, our resonance affects the frequency of the earth. We're needed here at this time. Us, we are. I'll surrender this stage now.
Wow, that was incredibly beautiful, Three. I'm super grateful, and I'm really
Well,
fascinated with those visions. A lot of this kind of stuff seems to come in through stories, almost like parables, because I think that our subconscious, just like when we dream, it's like we're when we wake up, it was easier for our mind to think, okay, these are the items I saw in the dream, but it's actually like really symbolic of all kinds of other things that our consciousness doesn't really maybe have a grid for or fully remember. So the fact that people are getting visions and dreams and these kind of supernatural experiences as they're remembering stuff, totally makes sense. And that's why we feel a little crazy. But that's why we also need to speak up and find one another, like you said.
well, you know what? I lost my brother just because I do research and alien research and stuff like that, and spiritual, and I'm an invisible analyst and stuff. I wasn't invited to my brother's son's wedding because he didn't want me to. They didn't want me to be around there because they think I'm crazy or weird. I mean, and that's the whole thing about the whole world, about this UFO, spiritual thing that everybody's waking to. It's like, I don't know what's wrong. I don't know what's wrong with my brother, but he was like jealous of me anyway when I was growing up because I had bought a house and built a house and all that stuff. But once you lose them, you lose them, and you said, you know what, it wasn't worth it because to be even his brother, because he tried to steal the house of my dad's house. He stole the boat, he stole the money in the account and everything. And so my brother was a thief anyway. So he's the bad guy, not me. I mean, just because I'm a researcher in these weird things. I mean, people look at you weird, and you know what? I don't give a crap. I don't give a crap of what you think about me, because I know more things than anybody, because I'm a scientist, and I prove things. I got alien implants in me that I found, and I was abducted by aliens. I went to MUFON. They won't help me. Dr. Roger Lear died in 2014. He was doing the alien implant removal program, and after that, in 2014, no one took the torch and started. So I'm actually starting doing it, and I got like 7 alien implants on the left side of my body. Okay, and these aliens are doing this to the human race, and I'm not the only one. So, but I'm gonna try to help some people, with this alien implant removal program. I'm actually started it on Facebook. So if someone wants to find it, just I haven't, it's a lot of work I got to do to get it going. So yeah.
Wow, that's a really, really huge topic you just went into there, and it's a really good one. Do you think you could share your Facebook page on your Twitter wall so that I can see it? Or maybe in a private message for me?
Well, you can find you can look on my Twitter space. It starts with my mother. I tell about the story when I was born by fire again. And I found out about my mother. She was born on the 27th, died on the 27th, and was 27 years old when she died. And she died on the 7th month, 27 of 67. And I was 43 years old. I watched this movie called The Seeker. He was the seventh son of the seventh son. And it was like looking at my story, you know, because my eyes were open. I could see spirits in the trees. I could see them in the clouds. I actually turned on my switches like AI, artificial intelligence. You could do this. It's no joke, man. You just think, okay, I'm going to turn on my night vision, and I did that. Okay, I'm going to turn on this. I'm going to turn on that. That's the key about quantum and consciousness. And a lot of people, the scientists are talking about quantum consciousness, but they never met nobody like that yet. And I'm at a quantum level because I could see through walls. Really, the spiritual realm. I mean, I'm like Superman, you know, and that's why they're attacking me, you know. And plus, I'm born on 320, which is the 13th sign. It's in between uh, March the 20th. It's in between the Pisces and the Ram, you know, 12 and 1, like the month, you know. So, yeah, just get on my Twitter, and all my research that I've been doing is all on Twitter. I've been doing stories and pictures like the cube I saw in Southern California, no, in California, whatever. It was on the ground, it wasn't flying. This big giant cube and stuff. So I have a lot of stories. If you want to check it out, just get on my Twitter, you know?
Yeah, thanks for that, Open Eyes. You know, this analogy comes to mind. Three, and I think Joseph, you both said be a witness, which is an interesting expression. I agree. I just haven't heard that really. And it's like, I think Thunder, you called it like an ever exploding God or something. And so you see all these different angles. It's like was it like the 8 blind mice who are all touching an elephant, and they're all describing a different part of it, and it just sounds completely different depending on your point of view and what you're actually looking at or feeling, touching. And so you say this is what it is to someone else who's experiencing something completely different, but you're all just revealing these, or you're bearing witness to these different faces or angles of God in its totality. I did just want to invite anyone else who might want to come up and speak. Nakaim, I'm going to get you up here as a speaker. But yeah, if anyone else feels compelled or you just want to chat or share your story, that'd be great. Please come up, just request, and we'll get you up here.
I would say that, yeah, the best way that I could describe the experience to people who've never had it, and I saw it more than once, would be God like a giant sparkler. And we're all these little sparks out on the tip. And that's about the best way that I can explain it. The sort of interconnectivity, in a way that we really are all just God dreaming, for lack of a better term. None of us are strangers. We're all running around with amnesia, playing hide and seek, right? Then that's the hardest part that I have had to deal with in, coming back, or whatever you would call it, is that those people standing next to me aren't strangers, right? You want to talk about the depth of the human soul or heartache. I recognize you. There is something to grapple with.
It's so interesting because a lot of movies and books and stuff on that try to like cover or disclose this topic, on one hand it's like when we watch those things, there's a part of us that's like, oh my god, this feels true. Maybe this is a disclosure. Maybe our oversoul helped create that movie, I don't know. And then there's another angle of the psychology of it all, where you're like, almost like you feel invalidated, then like, well, it's cheesy as fuck then. This thing I remembered in my past life regression is in a movie, you know? And it's just kind of a weird experience because I don't know. Do you have a comment on that one, Citizen?
No, I'm just laughing because I completely agree. I completely agree. It is an interesting and surreal experience to see these things reflected, to some extent in the external world. I think, Joseph, you had a hand up, and then Nakaim, will get to you and your story and everything that you want to say. So, Joseph, go ahead first there.
Yeah, I just want to comment about the witnesses thing, because that's actually kind of interesting, and I understand it sort of in a scientific way when we're talking about quantum fields and stuff. For people who's familiar with quantum physics and stuff, particles react differently once they're observed, right? So you can take that principle into higher quantum fields as well, which consist of light and consciousness and stuff, to which that's the connection in those higher quantum fields that we're all connected. But in order to do stuff, to do energy work in those quantum fields, we have to know that they're there. So somebody, for instance, who can say, well, I believe I have an energy body, I believe there's something there, is different from somebody saying, I've been there and I've seen it, right? So they are the witnesses. And for us to do energy work in those quantum fields, we have to know that it's there so that we can we begin observing it again, right? And it reacts differently. And just a quick bit on the witness. Actually, I'll quote Jesus when he was speaking to a rabbi, and the rabbi was saying, "Well, uh, tell me about the heavens and stuff." And Jesus said, "Well, if I tell you about earthly things and you don't understand, why would I tell you about heavenly things?" And he made a comment. He said, "We come as the witnesses, and you believe us not." So this was an issue, from people who's experiencing this and trying to talk about it. Just so people know, Jesus experienced the same thing, and he said, like, we come as witnesses, but you guys, you believe us not. So I find that interesting with the witnesses thing.
Yeah, I'm really glad you went here too, because I think that's probably why Jesus spoke in these parable stories, was basically to keep himself and the others safe. Um, and it's also probably why he was killed, because he was teaching quantum stuff, like how you eat fish in the third dimension and walk through a wall on the same day. Like, cool, just a regular Tuesday for Jesus. And then, like, walking on water and calming storms and, performing miracles. And I think we're onto something here.
Yeah, I think we're definitely onto something. I'm still wrapping my head around that. I'm gonna be thinking about that the rest of the day. That act of observation. And it seems like so much of what was going on, through, you called it the scamdemic, it's like trying to disconnect us, to keep people from being able to witness these the full mind of God, or whatever you want to think of that as. And it's like when there's no more witnesses left, you can't manipulate the field anymore. We become passive or docile, subject to someone else being able to do it. So yeah, I hope I'm saying your name right. Nakaima. I can't see the whole thing. Nakaima. There we go. Do you want to come up and chat with us a bit here?
Yes, thank you so much. I am so grateful and always energized to listen to people who 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 know who they are. I personally, my existence has always been my authentic spiritual self, because I can't separate myself, the physical and the spiritual. And I think evil is the hijacking of our individual spiritual consciousness by religion, by people who, for whatever reason, want to use our collective submission to their evil for power. Because when we talk about angels, in Africa, angels were not a myth. People would see them as you see each other. And we are shocked that people talk about them as if they were ancient beings who existed, who appeared to certain individuals. And that's why when we describe our own our names for spiritual beings, we have several spiritual beings in Africa. And the world has lumped them, oh, Africans engage in ancestral worship. No, we separate different things. Yes, we know that when my father passes on, my mother passes on, their spirit does not go away. It is my ancestor. My grandfather's spirit does not, disappear in thin air. It still exists in a realm that is real. And when we leave that, then there is another realm of spiritual entities who were guardian spirits. And it's not like, oh, it's a miracle that people would see them. No, it would be coexistence with other beings. In Africa, it is coexistence with other beings who are real. They are not a myth, they are real. And that's why most people are shocked that people would say in the totems, when you say, like my totem, my animal spirit is this. Because even these animals exist in a realm and their spirits also exist in another realm. I personally, when I was growing up, because there's pumping in Africa, the agenda in Africa is to continue to dismiss our reality in the spiritual realm so that the world is not, exposed to it or does not come into light with our reality in the things that we experience and the things that we see. As a child growing up, I was brought up like most Africans. I was brought up Muslim, but I would see things, and these things were real. And because I was taken to my grandmother because I think my parents realized that they could not maybe deal with me. So I was taken to the village. And that's why most mystics in Africa, they are taken to the villages because that's where they're safe. They are safe and they're surrounded by nature. They are surrounded, even as children. Whatever you see that happened in the Bible, where, people who were called, who had these gifts, would be taken to special places so that their gift or their, as witnesses, they are protected, they are nurtured, and they are taught and guided. Because when somebody physically is 4 years, yes, their spirit could be ancient, but the 4-year-old body needs to be groomed, to be brought at par with the higher gift that is actually bigger than a whole community. And I think we lose sight of that. And throughout my journey, of course, being shunned is an equivalent. If you're called and you are into these realms and you're conscious, everyone will reject you. One, it stems from envy because people think it's easy. It's not. It's not easy. But as much as they condemn it, they envy it. They would want to have it. But instead of acknowledging that, wow, you have it, how can we walk with it? Because it's the old adage of saying, when you walk around a star, at least you can get some stardust. Most people forget that even stardust can shine. They want to kill the star. That's what's wrong with the world. Because the people who have captured our whole collective spiritual consciousness through religion, they have a portal. They want to retain control. And that's why they train individuals around families to hate on those who are gifted because they don't want them to spread that knowledge. That's why the hate starts within our own families. Your own siblings will start hating on you. These whole stories that we hear, Joseph was hated on by his brothers and sold off. It's still happening. Anyone who has a gift, it's like a curse, the Joseph curse. The family who needs to deal with you, people who feel that you are bigger than they'll ever be, will start saying, oh, that's a weirdo. And in Africa, they'll say, oh, she is taking all our luck. She is a witch. You know that witch thing? Anybody in Europe who had that extra eye was burnt. Why were they burnt? The crucifixion didn't happen on Jesus alone. All those women who are burnt on the stake, they're saints. We should acknowledge them. They paved the way. They suffered because they were loud. They saw things and would say, well, I see this. We can change this. And the evil capitals of the world, wherever they say that those are the religious capitals, those are evil capitals of the world. And we should recognize them as evil capitals. Those are the capitals, those are the centers, those are the headquarters that fight against individual consciousness rising up. They'll call you out, they'll call them cults. Actually, as an individual, be called a cult. Why? Because they have evolved words to ostracize people with a consciousness, people who can see. And these spaces provide the opportunity for us to come together because we are all individually isolated from people who should know better. And I think Jesus was a flag bearer because he recognized that even his own mother, he said, who is my mother? Why? Because he knew that everybody around you is going to reject you. Because one, they are fearful. I don't know why everyone has the spirit of fear. Why do you fear the unknown? Why aren't you excited about discovering something new that you didn't know? And that is that spirit of fear that is preventing people from, rising and, seeing the magnificence. And as somebody who was born in a Muslim family, I asked my spirit guide, I said, why, if you knew that I was going to be who I am, because Nakaima is a reincarnated deity in my region. I said, if you knew my purpose was this, why did you let me experience Islam? Do you know that when I asked that question, I was taken in the night. I was transfigured into the heavens. And when I was being taken, I realized that this was a space that was between day and night. This was a space that was between time. It was between time. You couldn't really apportion it's night or it's day to that time. And when I reached there, I realized that, wow, this is a different realm. Oh, this is heaven. And the person who welcomed me was Muhammad, because mind you, I'd said, why did you allow me to experience Islam if you knew my path was different? And the answer was to transfigure me and, transport me to the realm where I would get the answer. And when I reached that space, the person who welcomed me was like this Prophet Muhammad speaking Arabic. But when you're in that realm, language is not a hindrance. There's no blockage. You don't need to speak the language of the world. You don't need to speak English. You don't need, it is that spiritual language. Your spirit just knows. Knowledge is just in milliseconds. You just know. Knowledge is abundant. You don't just seek it. You are existing in the knowledge itself. And when I reached there, it's like, I knew, oh, this is Muhammad. This is the person who brought Islam. But then when he escorted me, we reached a gate. And when we reached a certain gate, I realized that he was saying, I cannot proceed further. It's like he was actually of less, like how, a less level, and beyond a certain gate, beyond a certain level, he could not proceed. So my answer was yes. All these religions, all these people who brought these religions were elevated in their time. But for us to continue to think that people who lived before us 3,000 years ago, 200 years ago, are higher because they told their story, I think that is the worst sin we can commit to our existence. They told their story. We read their stories. Where are our stories? What will we pass on? Well, at least for them, they passed on something. They told their stories. We still read about their stories. Why are we denying the future generations the stories that we are being exposed to? What we see, what we have experienced, so that they can experience actually higher elevations than us. In that whole visual transfiguration, I saw that I am on a higher vibration than the person who brought Islam. So it's not about right and wrong in the spiritual realm. And that's where they have, diverted us by engaging us in the debate. Oh, what is Christianity and Islam? Which is better? They are competing. No. They are individuals who told their stories. We read their stories. They experienced them. We cannot negate them, but they should not negate our experiences either, because we have them.
You got a good point. I'm glad you pointed that out. That's about the greatest thing I ever heard anybody say about our time right now, because I don't know why they're rejecting us. It's really silly. It's stupid. Yeah, and I'm so glad you said it from someone else. That that is so beautiful what you said about that. I mean, it's so true. It's so real. Yeah, I love that, man. I'm glad you said something today.
Okay.
Yes, I love it too. I love you so much. You can keep going. I just wanted to tell you I love you.
I love you guys so much because your family. It's like how Jesus found his own disciples, how he found his family and team who were like, who spoke his language. So unless we come together in fellowship and strengthen each other, share our stories, we will be a nuisance. We should not have existed. Because we exist. There are other people who do, why we are being envied? Why we are being persecuted? By those people who are close to us. Because they think they would do much with if they had a gift like ours. If their conscience were elevated like ours. But where do we draw from? Because the world around us depletes our energy. We need to refuel. We need to be with people who gravitate at the same level, who understand our language, who understand, when someone says, oh, I saw this, that it's real. Because for me to be able to experience Muhammad at that level, and I realized that, yes, his frequency 1,500 years ago, yes, it was high at that time. But if someone's frequency was high at a time when there were no airplanes, where there was no technology, what should our vibrations be in times of the internet? Our vibrations should be higher. If people could praise, the universe and God at a time when they were just horses, at a time where there's nuclear energy, our gravitational, ascension should actually be higher in the seventh, sixth realm, Before even technology is there, our spirits are higher than technology. They are the ones that inform technology. And if we do not, dignify our experiences and speak to them, because personally, because I'm a reincarnate of the royal priesthood, like sometimes when you are reborn in such a category, you have to work double because you have to beat the timeline. Because the reincarnate, the soul within you is remembering the physical presence when they existed, maybe 500 years ago. And your realm is like you gravitate towards maybe the forest, a grass thatched hut, because that's why your DNA memory of that entity who you are reincarnating existed. So I had to fast track it. I had to be intentional. And as I say, you know what? If you were speaking to kings, then I should be speaking the equivalent of kings is now presidents. And I said, if you want me to be at that energy, with that energy, you need to work hard. The realm has to work hard and fast track my physical self to be able to sit with presidents and be able to talk to them. You know that happened in 2006. I was elected as a member of parliament. I spoke to my president. I met Barack Obama. I met the Queen of England, who's just died. I've been with Mswati in South Africa. It's because I was intentional. How intentional? Because if we it's like we all exist, but we all have specialties. And I want to encourage you, my brothers and sisters, seek out your specialty. Don't be all over the place. If you're a healer and your purpose, then you are the one who should be on top of the technological medical advancement, because that's who you are. Your spirit is higher than all that has been advanced. But it's because we don't come together to like say, okay, how is this done? How do I specialize in my calling? Because you can't be who you are not. I cannot profess healing because personally, in my culture, there are people who are herbalists who will look at a plant and know that this plant can heal. I'm not that kind. But there are those who are gifted. And they are the ones who should be on top of discovering new medication for new ailments. Because their spirits have been returned to the world to advance healing. And look at new plants and say, okay, that is a leaf. That flower can heal this. Through visions. Such advancements are got through visions. So I want to encourage that let each of us be very intentional in what your specialty, in what your purpose, and why you are who you are. That way, we'll be able to be a force that will change the world, a force that will be reckoned with for positive world advancement and the future. Thank you so much.
Wow. I am so grateful for you. I love you. As you know, we were destined to find one another. You were destined to be here today. All of this was destined to take place. Yes, and we are family.
I love you too, guys. I love you too.
That was great. Thank you for all of that. Wow. I mean, so many interesting things to touch on. One of the things when Cosmic and I were talking about this spaces was people who do have these experiences, near death or something like that, where they're like you were talking about, people who can heal, they can see things and know what to do with them. How do we treat them as a society? And for the most part, in the Western culture, we lock them up or throw them in like a mental institution or something. It's like that gift is not recognized. It's not nurtured. Like you were talking about in the village, usually brought into a safe place. Even if that person is 4 years old, they have the soul of someone who can do great things for everyone in the community, in the world. And I would love to see that be nurtured more and people like that given safe room to grow and develop. And I think just talking about it is important. I will say, you were talking about people can hate you for your gifts kind of thing. I'm thinking of Tesla, who died basically alone and broke, whereas he shouldn't have. He was the greatest inventor of all time. And I think, just my personal opinion, he rubbed people the wrong way a little bit, almost like he was throwing his gifts in people's faces, and flaunting them. And I don't think that was the right approach. And he later in life admitted that he kind of went about things the wrong way. I don't think you ever change the fact that some people will be jealous of that esoteric connection. It's like it's never just going to be accepted. There's always the people who want to crucify Jesus. And so there's an element of walking lightly and correctly to be effective in this world. Like you can't, if you have all these ideas in your head for inventions that are going to improve the world, you can't just go boast about how incredible you are and how in touch with the source of the creative universe and all this stuff, because then people are going to want to take you out. And so it would be great if everyone was on your side, and that didn't happen. I also think there needs to be a recognition of the way things are and probably always will be. So in my mind, there's those two things. Can we help society nurture people who have these gifts and abilities? And then at the same time, if you do have some, how do you act without incurring resentment from your fellow humans?
Yeah, fantastic point. I want to add to that. So like when I was a child, it took me a while to realize like who I am and why I am the way I am. And throughout my life, I would deal with, it's like as an old soul empath, I was just always loving and giving on people. And when I would meet these types that we're talking about that would feel jealous or kind of like hateful towards me, it just broke my heart. And I didn't understand like why they would be acting that way, because I was loving on them and like there was nothing, I didn't have a problem with them. And I knew it was spiritual warfare, but I just like I would try really hard back in the day to, I would almost like try harder with people who were toxic or who treated me bad, because I felt like love is the answer, and it is. But the interesting thing is, even before I really knew like who I was or what I'm doing here and why things are this way, that I would get that reaction. And I think it's because the frequency of our energy signature is what people pick up on even before we might know who we are or why we are. um, and then once you do know who you are, so for example, as time went on, I began to learn things or realize things about this dynamic. So then I realized that I was an empath. I realized certain other things about my spiritual giftings. I realized what probably happened to me in my near death experience as a child. Um, and I realized and started to remember like why I'm here, what I came here to do. And yes, involving things that can change the world with regards to healing and quantum spiritual medicine type practices. And so then when I realized that, I started learning things about boundaries and how boundaries is a principle that applies to all of our dimensions. It's a spiritual thing. It's not to shut people out, it's to keep things running smoothly and safely. So, like how you have energetic, emotional, and physical boundaries in your life, where you don't just let anyone treat you any way, and like how your body is a type of a boundary, the house you live in is a type of a boundary. And then with spiritual practice, there's boundaries. So you can create spiritual protection for yourself. That way, you can walk amongst kings and queens and presidents. and you can walk in authority and power, and you can be seen and heard in large spaces, and you can stay safe because you're activating and believing and calling in the bigger picture, your guides, your angels, your ancestors, your spiritual family here. You're connected to a divine source that keeps you safe. And when we start to learn these practices and practice them and teach them to one another, you will begin to see that this is true and that you can be safe, and have authority and design these type of things that maybe Tesla was trying to disclose. You can design these things and create stuff to share and maybe be safe. But I do think there's still wisdom boundaries. It's not like, I mean, it's not like we don't be wise. It's not like we just stand on top of a hill during hunting season or something. It's like, yes, still be wise, but yet there is something here that we can walk in with authority, which is what we're doing right here, right now. And so I'm proud of all of us here.
I think that's really interesting about Tesla is to consider that he believed he was in communication with some otherworldly entity. And so it kind of opens a can of worms again. And like Citizen said, I think it's remarkable that we went from a time to where those different gifted people were taken aside in the tribe and they were made shamans or seers. And today we do largely lock them up. If I've learned anything about the mental health system, is you'd be amazed with the number of gifted people who are currently locked up in a room somewhere because other people didn't understand them. And that's really concerning. So we've lost a huge sort of magical component in society because of that. And just off the top of my head, a few of the things that I can think of here for people that are interested in this topic would be the Journeys Out of the Body series of books by Robert Monroe, Saved by the Light by Daniel Brinkley, and the work of Mark Macy and George Meek would also be some great places to look for these topics and find some interesting discussion.
Okay, great recommendations. I'm gonna look into those. You know, Cosmic had a tweet yesterday, I think, about the cycles of past life integrations, and I retweeted and said, "This is a whole new psychology emerging." And I truly believe that because, I mean, imagine you're having all these issues psychologically and you say, I'm a walk-in, I'm a different consciousness in this body, blah, blah. They're going to go, okay, Thunder. Yeah, well, here's your room in this mental institution, because there's just no framework for that. There's no model that they can use to understand what you're saying. The brain is this instrument or whatever that creates consciousness versus channels consciousness. It's just, there's no framework to understand these things. And like, for all the benefits, hurrah for science, it's led us into this place where, like you were just saying, these spiritual gifts are neglected. They're laughed at. They're, like Nakayima was saying, like underneath it all, there's a fear, the fear of the unknown, the fear of the world being upended. But in the world of science, it's just ridiculed. And so I say this a lot. One of the things I want to do, big picture, is merge these two worlds, the world of the metaphysical and the science, because they're not mutually exclusive. There's a place for both of them, and they can coexist. The metaphysical journey of psychology can become part of a psychological curriculum. It should be, and people would have much better results. So it's always on my agenda to merge these two things.
Yeah, like sometimes safety, like I said, we need to intentionally engage the spiritual world, that realm, to come through, not to be hesitant. Because I think the spiritual realm has realized that it causes danger to people or to its hosts, to people it inhabits. And that's why it's also very cautious and hesitant. And as a person at the physical level, you have to encourage it. Say, come through. If you want me to be fearless, don't be fearless too. If you want me to perform this, let's do it together. Because that's my safety and that's your safety. Because if I don't deliver, you don't deliver. And this whole conversation, and that's why people who are spiritual sometimes are taken into mental asylums, because you're speaking to an entity whom you know is real. You have a duality. You're two people, and that's why they call them like bipolar. That you would be diagnosed as bipolar because you exist. And they are personas. They are these entities that are one with you. And they're real. You're not crazy. You are doing all these things. And my saving grace was because my whole family was engaging in Islam, and my grandmother, she was also a Muslim. But my spiritual entity appeared in person, appeared to her when she was in the garden. So that is the audacity that the other realm has to use so that we also have that armor. Because as a 4-year-old, if my major spiritual deity had not come through and appeared to my grandmother, maybe my story would be different. But you see, like there are mountains and hills in Africa where they say that is a spiritual hill. At night, there's a conference, there's a spiritual conference, the spirits gather. And it's true. You see fires on those mountains. You see fireplaces on those mountains. And, like villages speak about it, some look at it as myths. So my grandmother, when I was taken to her, and she was in the garden very early in the morning. And there's this very unique female form that came to her and greeted her and said, "Oh, I greet you in peace." I said, "Yeah." Then, because I was seated and I was with her, she was saying, "Where did you get that girl?" I said, "That's my granddaughter." Said, "Are you sure?" She said, "Yes." And I think my grandmother was feeling irritated that how can a stranger be asking me about my own granddaughter? Then she told her, she said, "There's a reason why I've appeared to you. You don't know me. Have you seen me before?" My grandmother said, "No." She said, "Yeah, you have to protect that girl. You have to protect her, or else she'll be taken." And in our culture in Africa, people who are gifted would be taken, and their families would never see them again. So my grandmother she was terrified and said, "What do I tell my son? What happened to his child if this happens?" And she said, but she was terrified, and I think she was a bit aggressive towards the spiritual entity who manifested. So she said, I don't want to be talking about my granddaughter with a stranger. So the deity left. You know what happened in the next few weeks? It was a nightmare for my grandmother. I was 4 years old, and every night I would be taken out of the house and they would find me in the kraal, because for us, the kraal and the cows are a center. That's where the center of our community is. So they would find me in the kraal at night at 3 a.m. And I'm surrounded by all these cows. My grandmother then realized it's real. "Hey, what this woman? Where can I get her? Where can I see her? Because now I don't know how to protect my granddaughter." And she didn't know what to do. So every day, the next few weeks, she gathered all my uncles and my aunties and said, we have a problem. This woman appeared to me. I don't know where she is. And she told me, and I should have listened. So what do we do? So my grandmother would put me on her back, go around all the nearby villages, but she didn't know the name. Because this entity, mind you, is a spiritual entity. So she had no address. So my grandmother had to walk to known spiritualists and ask them, do you know there's this woman who looks like this? She came to me. They said, we don't know. Then one night, my grandmother was coming back. Then she met her again. Then she said, are you taking me seriously now? She said, yes, please help me. Oh, I don't know. I'll do everything. She said, the only thing I can tell you is protect her by putting anointing ghee. We use ghee in my culture, not like the olive oil that is used in the Middle East. In my culture, we use ghee. It's like clarified butter that we get from the milk. It's been used for ancient times for skin therapy, even when people have like broken limbs. It's very good. It's used as a medication. It is good for skin. It's good for healing bones. And that's when the entity told my grandmother, before she sleeps, you have to immerse her in ghee. And ghee is not cheap. It's 20 liters in my culture. 20 liters of milk get 1 kilo of ghee. So she told her she has to have that every day. So to protect her until she's at a certain age. And that's what was done. So those of us who have these experiences, we have to guide people who have such children. How do you anoint? This anointing substance is different by culture. And I think this one product fits all. You find everyone, oh, use olive oil. Yes. In the time of the Middle East, Jesus, that was their anointing oil in their locality. But each area, according to nature, has its own anointing substance. So I think we have knowledge and we should share it and be intentional. Let's not fear our spiritual experiences and talk to them like, oh, I saw them, but engage, ask, wrestle with them. Tell them, if you want me to do a purpose, don't be fearful. Come through. Manifest it. Like, I can only do so much because I'm stuck in this physical body. But you can do much more. So take me with you. Let's engage them. Let's debate with them. And that's why in the Bible, sometimes they say, God said, wrestle with me. Who wrestled with God or the angel? Was it Jacob? I think it was Jacob. You know why they were great? It's because they say, well, you cannot choose me and then abandon me to my own devices. I cannot be called, and yet, you leave me alone to struggle with this whole hate with people who don't understand me. Thank you.
No, thank you. My God, it's so beautiful. It's so beautiful and profound. Everything you said there, it's just a wealth of wisdom. It's like ancient metaphysical gemstones. Such great value. This is interesting about the protection oil for children. And this anointing oil. I'm really thinking about it. I love it when you speak, so I want you to speak whenever you want to on here. And I want you to speak as long as you want to.
Yeah, like in each culture, like I say, the spiritual world was at par in every indigenous culture. It's like they were working together. It's not like, it's like, not like, oh, suddenly angels. No, they would work together. They would inform each other. So what they call UFOs, like, oh, these are from outer space. We exist. There is coexistence of the different universes. And we exist at the same timeline. It's just because we are not that layer that has been created by evil. And I come back. That layer that is blinding us has been artificially created. Like I said, the evil capitals, the religious capitals that continue to abduct our minds into looking at physical beings as, oh, this is the one. I'll share with you, at one time I asked, there's this Hajj every year, the pilgrim to Mecca. So most of my friends, family members would go. And then when they come back, it's a festivity, celebration. Someone has come back from the Hajj, the annual pilgrim to Mecca. So I went to welcome one of my friends who had gone and had done the Hajj. So I went with my husband. And when we reached there, she told us, oh, I went there. We surrounded the Kaaba. Then we went to hit the devil, where we pick stones. Then we went to Mina. Then we went to Mount Hira. We went, they told, it's a month-long, journey where like pilgrim and, there are all these rituals that are done around the Kaaba. So we listened, and that time I was just listening. So we came back after we had been there, and when I came back and slept, it's like my spiritual realm was saying, "But you, it was almost like, but you who does not. Why do you listen to stories when you can go there?" And that night, I traveled to Mecca in the spirit. And I found that they were like cleaning the place because it was after the Hajj. But then, when I was going around the places, they were talking about, then suddenly, I feel this evil gravitational pull. It's like something was seeking my eyes to like pull me. Then I had this voice, my spirit said, please avoid the direct glare of the Kaaba because people have made it an idol. And that's why it's powerful. Make sure that it does not pull you. So I like said, wow. So it's like, then I was getting, the experiences. Because before you go to Mecca, did you know that they make you do your will? Because they tell you it is a blessing for you to die when you're there. And you know that every day people die when they go to Mecca? They bury, every hour they are burying some people. Did you know that, you guys?
No,
If
I
it
didn't
was,
know that.
oh yes. Before you go to do the Hajj in Mecca, because there are always stampedes there, people die.
I did not know that. I know we just got Dr. Brave on the stage here. I might want to get to him. Do you have something to touch on with what Nakayima is saying?
Yeah, you're just assuming that 1.8 Muslims are too stupid to follow their own faith. Fuck off.
Okay, so now I'm just telling you because I was brought up Muslim. I read the Quran, I finished it. And in in my spiritual realm, I was shown what is being taught to me. Because what I'm telling you is, one, before you perform the Hajj, because it's one of the pillars of Islam. And that's why they say at least everyone should make that pilgrim at least once in their lives. You can imagine people they really save, if like to say, oh, let me take my mother and let her do the Hajj. But the reality is, when you're going for the Hajj, you have to make a will. And they've already told you that it's a blessing to die in Mecca. You'll go to Jannah. You'll go to heaven when you die from there. So it's not questioned when people die, when they go there, because it's already a blessing. You've been told it's a blessing to go if you die there. Well, now, for me, when I was being transfigured to experience in the spiritual realm, I was shown that this was like a ritual, a blood sacrifice that happens in that month. It's like that entity takes in all this blood of those people who are dying. That's what feeds it. And
Well,
like
so
I
how
said,
do people be safe if they want to do those rituals? Is there a safe way, or is that not a good ritual?
no, you've been told. And they say you don't question. It was a commandment that was left. If you are a Muslim, you have to just believe it. You have to go there. And when you go there, of course, there are so many people from different places. Of course, you cannot, because there is a place where they call the stoning of the devil. It's a pillar. And then there's a place where you have to go and kiss the mouth, that place where they put like the Kaaba, the eye, like the nozzle, in Malay they call it. So people want to touch it. And there's a struggle there, normally, so that people touch it. So in that struggle, sometimes people lose their breath. There's some the crowd thing. People are taken away when they have high blood pressure, when they have what. And eventually, I don't know. But because they already normalized it in the psychology and told you it's a blessing to die there. When people die, they don't question it. It's
Yeah, that's a
okay.
good point. That when it's like in certain situations like this, if the collective believes a certain thing about something, even if that's not really the original, then they can manifest it. And I also wanted to say I'm sorry for the way that that guy spoke to you, but
No,
thanks for moving
because
past it.
I'm knowledgeable about Islam. I was brought up in that religion. I finished the Quran. So anybody who talks to me, they should know that I'm very knowledgeable about Islam. And I was brought up in that religion. It's not like I was an on-seer, but I know everything. And it's because I'm blessed to be at the spiritual level, to be an individual who can seize these things. And because of that, most people, like I say, fear. They fear because there are too many people who've been told these things and they are comfortable believing them. So when you see the alternative, they're scared. Because if I was not knowledgeable, he would have stayed and engaged me on the
That's
knowledge.
interesting. Yeah, good
On the
point.
knowledge.
Yeah, because when you're not afraid of hearing other perspectives,
Mm.
then you don't silence them and you can learn from anyone at any place.
Yeah.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, because he could have said, oh, but the Quran says this, or the Hadith says this, because I have all that knowledge. You cannot be spirit filled unless you don't, because Islam, the one thing, the Hadith, the first ayah in the Quran talks about Ikra, seek knowledge. And, it's a waiver.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's like creator in truth is surrounds us, and then these different groups of people who feel comfortable around one another, they form their religions, or they create their books to channel some of that universal truth. And then some people, kind of like you talked about earlier, they it's like they don't see how it's all interconnected. They see only this is true, and therefore we're afraid of, or we want to harm or reject these other religions or beliefs, because it's like they can't see the golden thread that connects it all. It's like they're afraid of the way it's being presented, and that creates the division that doesn't actually have to exist.
The different sects of Islam, the Shia, the Sunni, the Ahmadiyya, those sects, they differ on interpretation, and they are so hateful towards each other. There are those who are dominant, say, oh, you don't do this, because somebody within Islam saw a certain perspective. The Ahmadiyya, those ones, they got another prophet after. And the mainstream Islam say there's only one last prophet. So the difference is there. But they all believe the book apart from that one. It's like Christianity, the same. But for me, it has been my life. Spirituality is my life purpose. It's my existence. So I have knowledge of a religion I was brought up in, Islam. And if someone comes, they should come from a point of information and knowledge, because I'm very knowledgeable around Islam, the Hadith and the Quran. So, well, I saw what I saw, and I know what is taught. And between what I saw and what is taught, that's where he was scared, because the truth is, people are told it's a blessing to die to Mecca. So there are so many people who die every year, and the numbers are in thousands every year, thousands. That doesn't make breaking news. No, it does not break news, because it has been accepted as a mainstream. And well, that will be a topic for another day. I think we will do a topic of all that and my
Yes, I would love
experience.
that. I'm hoping to do a Thursday show every week now. So if we can follow each other, then you can see we can cover more of these spiritual topics. Trying to create like a
I follow
secret soul
you and you
space.
follow me, by the way.
Yeah, so let's do it. Let's keep
Mm.
manifesting these beautiful conversations. I'm really grateful that you shared. It just felt like divinely powerful, beautiful, loving. And I had several people messaging me while you were talking and saying that they were crying and that they were really touched and just felt the love. So thank you. Um, and does anybody else want to share any life after near death experience? If not, we could wrap the room, or what do you think?
We could go for a little bit longer here. I know Marvel, we had you up a speaker, but didn't get around to having you chat. But if you want to come back up and share anything, please do. You know, Cosmic and I, and this is one of her callings, is to put these types of spaces together and bring people together to share this stuff. And so next Thursday, we're going to chat a bit about past lives and what that means and how to get a practical handle on that type of stuff, you know, because there's a lot of like, oh, this is my twin flame and blah, blah, you know, it's all kind of fantastical, or dare I say woo woo, which it doesn't have to be. It's actually, to me, an incredibly important part of existing and being alive and making sense of the world. So we wanted to delve into that next week. We're just kind of loosely keeping to a topic here with these spaces, but it's good for them to wander around and go where they need to go. So, you know, if some of this or all of it resonates with you, please come back next Thursday and check it out. Like I said, Cosmic is planning on doing these pretty much every Thursday morning. So yeah, if anyone wants to come up before we close it out, please just send a request.
Yeah, so I guess while we're waiting, I'll just say kind of what I said at the beginning, which is that I've been thinking about my life and my experience with the near death because I was maybe around age 2 when it happened, and I was in this car wreck, and it was on a highway, and there was like some ice on the road, and uh, my car seat, we had a Jeep, and it flew out so far that no one ever found the car seat. And on the side of a highway, there was a bush divinely planted there that apparently I landed in unconscious, and some other people driving along found me, and they had seen my mom next to the Jeep, like wandering around looking for something, confused. And so they went back and brought me to her. Thankfully, they didn't abduct me. And I guess I wasn't moving, and they had me laying down on this seat, and they brought my mom and me to the hospital. And the doctors were thinking that I might be paralyzed and all this. Um, and then all of a sudden, I don't know how much time passed, but then all of a sudden I started moving and like returning consciously, I guess. And so what's interesting is like just my whole life I felt like I felt like a very old soul in a small body. And this is partly why I was more introverted, because it was just a lot to take in. It's like I could read people's mail and stuff as a child, and occasionally I would speak into it, and people would sort of like not know how to process what just came out of a small person, um, and how it like really applied to their life, I guess. And I hadn't really thought about it till this show today, that that's probably because there's some kind of divine mystery that can happen um, if there's some type of way that we're altered, or maybe our higher self or our future self or an angel, something steps in for a mission. And like, I'm a little nervous saying all that, but I know it's not too weird for everybody in the room here. And it's just a different way to reframe kind of why my life has gone the way it has. And so I just want to put that out there because, yeah, just to encourage others to share their story.
How old were you when that happened? And I ask because I'm wondering if you remember anything before, or if it's like you had two lives or something, like it was a split or rupture in your normal timeline.
Yeah, so I was somewhere between the age of 1 and 2. But I do have memories. I do have lots of clear memories at that age, which I don't know if is super common for people. But I I I'm not sure if I remember exactly a lot about what happened before I was age 1 or 2, as far as to be able to compare it. I just know that as a small person, I never felt like that the other kids my age, I never felt like that I was thinking the way they were. I It's like the things that they were thinking and saying and talking about, like I could play and hang, but my mind was always, or my spirit was always aware of the so much more that's there. And maybe that's the only reference I have.
Well, I guess too, as we kind of wind down the spaces here, it looks like, do you have recommendations for anyone who might be going through this or wondering if it's something that they've gone through? Like, you know, I've heard some people who have these very like traumatic types of near death experiences. It takes like 13 years to be able to be normal again, like come back into this world and just carry on a conversation that's not, you don't have like both feet in that world and a pinky finger in this world. Like, do you have any advice for anyone who experienced the whole gamut of these experiences, for what they could do that might make life a little more manageable for them?
Yeah, I would say embrace the mystery. Make sure that you're taking care of your body, soul, and spirit. Eat living nutrition, earth barefoot, be in the sunshine, dig in the dirt, have pets, and then create and find safe spaces like this one. Find your people, know that you're not alone, and like be okay with being a forerunner of a topic of these type of experiences. Like, try to reframe it and see it as like a trailblazer. Try to see yourself the way that creator sees you, and don't don't interpret it like I'm weird, I'm different, I'm alone, I'm on this fringe group. Don't see it that way, but see it as something magnificent and beautiful and necessary. I mean, people have to volunteer to come forward for a new wave of consciousness. And if you volunteered, then you're more than able.
I like that a lot. Just for by virtue of being here, it's already showing that you're capable of doing what you need to do and saying what you need to say. You know, in preparation for the space a little bit, I was just kind of thinking over these topics and kind of going to what Nakajima was saying. It's like all of our stories, we exalt and exemplify the hero and the hero's journey. And so much of that story is the descent into the unknown, into the unconscious, and into death. And then, you know, the hero dies, and that's a tragedy. And if they don't, they return with all this new wisdom that you can't get anywhere else. It's like you have to die to get it. And we take that to be a story or not literal. And then so when someone says, I had this near-death experience, and now, you know, I see, like that one fellow was saying, he sees orbs and aliens and all this kind of stuff. We just sweep it under the rug and say, that's wild, that's crazy, that's not scientific, etc. But it's like all of our stories know it. The fundamental formula of the story is this journey into the unknown through death, through the destruction of the ego and the expansion into a godlike consciousness. Like we were talking about before, all these different faces of God. And so, yeah, like Cosmic, what you're saying, you're on the forefront of that. People who have these types of experiences, and while it may take a while to integrate and it's not well understood, it's like you're the hero. You're the one bringing the information that most people can't access. And so, yeah, anyone who's here now and a part of that journey, I commend you, because it's not easy. I think it was Thunder earlier was talking about there's no words for these concepts. It's like the concept, it's an experiential thing and it's so vast. And then we try to put it into words and express it. And it's very difficult. There's, even if we invent new words, it's hard to encapsulate these concepts to let people know them. But I think it's worth trying. It's worth the effort, you know, because not everyone can have that experiential experience of what these concepts and things are. So I'm happy everyone here is here and we can chat about this. It's great for me. I really like it.
Okay, can I say something like I think the near-death experiences sometimes can be traumatic events in one's life. They all represent the same, the trigger. Near-death experiences, trauma experiences, traumatic situations like war, like, you know, like shootings. Those can all be triggers that will trigger the, you know, it's like how a pilot engages the plane on the runway and engages it, you know, for it to like take off. So you need that gear. It's like your body needs that push and that lever, you know, pulling that lever. And sometimes it takes traumatic experiences, unfortunately, for some of those things to be triggered. Like me, my trigger was like at 3 years, my dad and mom divorced. I don't remember my time before then, but I remember the night that they separated, because I woke up and we were in like a town home in my country. My dad was a civil servant, and I was upstairs. I remember I woke up and I could hear things flying. I think they were fighting. Poop, poop. I remember my dad telling my uncles, my extended family, please remove the children. And what? It was at 3 years, it was confusing. I got out, I was from sleep, but then I knew there was chaos around me. Then I don't remember what happened after that. Then in the morning, I remember, because women at that time didn't have rights in the 70s when I was born. My mom, the police, there were police who came, and she had a baby, my baby sister, who was like maybe 1 week, and they were helping her like pack her bags to leave us. I didn't understand, but all I remember is that I saw these police women and policemen around our house. Then the next thing I remember, I was going, my uncle, I had this very small bridge, and as a 3-year-old, this bridge looked big. It was a stream, and in the villages they put wooden little cross bridges by wood, but then the stream is real passing down. I remember feeling that I'm going to fall. Then the next few months, I remember the struggle was I wanted to remember the face of my mother. But as a 3-year-old in Africa, the extended family does not allow this individualism. But I remember as a 3-year-old trying so hard, because in my spirit, I knew I'm going to forget this woman's face. I want to remember her. I don't know what she looks like. So every woman who would come to visit in my grandmother's village, I would come out to see if she's my mother. Then I would see, oh, she's not. Then, my mother comes from a different village across the country and a different tribe. So, like, there was no, it was, in Africa, the paternal side of the family takes the children. So they took us, me and my brother, to the village. And then one time I had an auntie who looked like my mother. When she came, I tried so hard to be around her, but then I realized that she was not reaching out to me. Then I said, oh, I think she's not the one. And then my mind went blank. Then I don't remember. My little mind did not remember a time where I lived with my mother. And that little 3-year-old wanted so hard to remember her mother. And I think for me, that was the trigger, the trauma that allowed my spirit to be independent and start experiencing, because it's like I was anonymous to this crowd, this whole extended family. It's like I didn't exist. It's like now I think that was the trigger that triggered my spirit. Like I would be alone, I would look at the sky, then I would hear these dreams, I would hear these voices when I would be sick. So for me, near-death experiences can be equated to trigger situations, traumatic situations that happen, especially when people are children, and those who are lucky maybe when they're adults. But it's more the mind and the spirit of a child is malleable. It is still form. It can be, nurtured and infused with different information. Children are open to learn. And that's why it happens so frequently when people are children. Because that's a stage where the spirit, the mind, the body, even children are very adventurous. They'll believe and are happy to know. They're not afraid. They're not scared. They listen to stories and believe them. So that's why they're very receptive to the spiritual things. And even in the Bible, The Bible says, like, God wants people to retain the minds of children. Why? It's because children are not sarcastic. They are not cynical. They are not angry. They're just receptive. They are open to new experiences. So that I wanted to share that the near-death experiences are equivalent to traumatic experience, any traumatic experiences that could have gone through.
Wow, I love that you shared that. Everything you said was really powerful. And the thing is, that is a wonderful reframe, because the trauma of a near death experience and other traumas literally are an initiation gateway into this spiritual dimension. And for whatever reason, like, this seems to be a universal law or happening where people have these traumatic experiences, and it's almost like it wakes them up from the inside. It's like their spirit, it gets the attention of the fullness of who they are, and it creates like, it like opens a new timeline for them, so it will feel a bit like a death and a rebirth because it's supposed to.
This might be a little bit of a reframe. This is the way I would look at it. Just my opinion. The near-death experience isn't the trauma. This is the trauma that we're living in now. And it's like, for some people, when they have that experience, all this trauma goes away and they realize, oh my gosh, I'm pure consciousness and everything is better. And when I'm in the body, in that world, and I'm separated and limited and all that stuff, that's the trauma. And so it's not, in my opinion, not so much that a traumatic event is happening, it's that a traumatic event is being removed. And then to come back in and have to integrate knowing what everything is actually the true nature of things, that's the difficult part. And that's what takes, a lot of time for folks. But it's just a little bit of a reframe on that. Yeah, I know we're going to close the room fairly soon, but I do want to hear from Joseph. Sorry I couldn't get you up on earlier, but how's it going?
Oh, it's going good. Sorry, I just had to step out. Like I say, I'm just in the middle of getting my house ready. I have a realtor coming here in about 3 hours to show a client. But yeah, it's interesting how you just articulated that we're living in the trauma. And further to what Nakayima was saying is that we're told to go back to the minds of children. It's like I understand this stuff, and this is stuff that I try to talk about, but a lot of people don't understand it in that way. But as children, we're pure. When we come into life, we are pure, and we're connected to the both worlds. We're actually connected more to the metaphysical world than the physical world as a child. And then we become indoctrinated into the trauma, so we lose touch of who we are. And that is what's meant about, go back to having the mind of a child. Because for some of the energy work and stuff that I want to do with people, it'll require certain people that have witnessed or that know that something is there. But the way to do it, like a way I'm going to try to explain it to people is, remember, for some people in school, you might remember when the teacher said it to you as a child, okay, everybody, let's put on our thinking caps. Well, my one is, let's put on our imagination caps and let's go back to the times that we were a child and let's play pretend. So if somebody's not sure the metaphysical world's there and they're not sure of this world of energy and that we can control it with consciousness and the power that we all have collectively, sort of a way to join in is just give into your childhood. Pretend. If that's what it takes to get you there, just pretend that it's all real. Pretend that world exists. Pretend that energy exists. Pretend that we are shifting frequencies and stuff. And also, something I wanted to make a couple comments to Nakayima about what she was saying before I had to leave the room. But she was saying about, where do we get our vibration from, these high vibrations? we get it from one another. We can feed one another these high vibrations, and we lift each other up. We've been indoctrinated into a world that right from the beginning, from a young childhood, they start teaching us separation. And we're separated by culture, we're separated by color, we're separated by language, we're separated by religion. Uh, it's just a full separation to disconnect us from each other our whole lives until, the lowest denominator of separation is down to the single, the individual. And that's what we've all been taught, is that we are the individual. And the individual that we're told that we are is the physical body. And it's all about the perception. Well, the body is only there for the perception, but we are not the perception. We are the perceivers, right? But we've been uh, misled into believing that it's all about the self and it's all about the individual. And this is where greed and selfishness and stuff, this is where it all stems from. In for the souls, we're all one. And that's where our true power as humanity lies. So when you were saying like uh, we were left books and we were left teachings from people thousands of years ago, and you asked the question, what are we going to leave for our future generations? Um, I want to just share ideas. I'll just call it ideas, but very real possibilities. Is that are we the generation that could possibly change the world for all future generations? Are we the generation that, accepts our other selves, our spiritual selves, and comes into an alignment with each other and elevate each other up to such high frequencies that we trap everybody else inside of those frequencies? And we could change the face of, we we could stop the world at this generation, and we could be the generation that is forever talked about in the future, of that one generation that stopped the cycle, that cycle of negativity, that cycle of believing we're all these individuals, right? We could be that generation that comes together and unites humanity. And then something, Citizen, you had said before is about encouraging the spiritually gifted. You're absolutely right, and that's something I could foresee in that type of a future where you recognize children that are spiritually gifted, and rather than ridicule them, rather than tell them stop pretending, right? We encourage it, and we encourage their gifts, and this is where we would come out with great healers and great scientists, right? It's from encouraging, but we have to get out of this programming of our perception that it's all about the self and it's all about you know how I perceive. It's like, I'm very much into this stuff and things that I've been showed and things that I've learned. And it's like I'm so much more than the perception, because the perception is really null and void when you really break down what is a perception, right? A perception is correct and incorrect simultaneously, right? It's correct to the individual, but that perception that's correct to me is different from everybody else's. So if we want to talk about right or wrong, well, it's right to me, but it's wrong to everybody else. And that same principle applies to everybody, right? You're right on your perception, but I perceive it differently. And once we get over this hump and recognize that it's only perceptions and no perceptions are the same. So what are we really arguing about? Well, it goes back to some of the stuff that Nakayima was talking about how we're told to hate, right? We're controlled by these evil people because they hijack our perceptions. They separate us from one another, and they try to tell us this is who you are, this is how you're supposed to be, right? Through religions and through politics and just through all of it. But we're all waking up to it. And I really think like we could be the generation. Maybe that's the purpose of the spiritual awakening. I see the awakening as two parts on this planet happening right now. I see many people who are becoming physically awakened, and they are realizing about the corruption of the world, the lies, the deceit, the control. But then we have another awakening, which is the spiritual awakening. And these are people who's focusing more on saying, wait a minute, there's another whole part of myself here, right? I've seen it, I've witnessed it. I've seen stuff that I can't explain in modern science, right? It just far surpasses um, perception of humanity, and that's part of the problem. Like I look at some things as being very humans being very arrogant. It's like, well, we already know everything. So if we can't explain it with what we already know, it can't be real. And that's a very arrogant statement for anybody to make on anything pertaining to the unknown. It's like, just we have to keep our minds open and accept all things coming in and just try to understand it. And a lot of us, I'm noticing from speaking in groups like this or hearing people speak, it's like we're all experiencing different things, or we're all experiencing rather the same things, but we're trying to articulate it or talk about it in different ways, and it's according to how we are interpreting our perception of it, right? But I think, like, we're the generation that's going to get over this hump. I truly believe that, and I think we're going to feed each other nakayama, uh, that we're going to feed each other these higher vibrations, and once we start connecting our consciousness, we can use the power of consciousness to affect vibration, and vibration, um that's all energy is. Energy is just vibrations and frequencies. But when we start taking control of vibrations, we start controlling the physical reality, because we start controlling the matter. The matter has to respond to the frequency it's given, right? And once we collectively, start controlling those frequencies, we will start rewriting a new narrative of reality. And I just wanted to share that because, it's going back to some things that you were talking about earlier.
See, I knew the wheels were spinning, man. I'm happy you came up and dropped all those comments from everything we said. You said we can use the power of consciousness to. You could have just left that blank, because I think you can fill in that blank with anything you want. Consciousness is everything. It's the fundamental force of this world and of all worlds. It's what everything is literally made out of, and we can control it, like you're saying, and together we can amplify that power. I do want to ask you a question based on something Cosmic talks about a lot with boundaries, because we are an individual at the end of the day. I mean, we are and we aren't, right? It's that paradox thing. So we're in this perceptual unit of a body as an individual. And just recognizing that's an illusion, I think it's dangerous, especially for some spiritual people, because then you open your doors up for anyone and everything, and you're subject to negative influence. And so I don't know that boundaries ever go away. And maybe the integrity or your vibration, you could say, is the boundary. But I'm just curious, after what you were saying about we're sort of taught this method of seeing things as an individual, I don't know that you ever get away from needing a semi-permeable membrane around you to let in what you want and keep out what you don't.
Actually, I do set affirmations whenever I do meditations, because I'm so it's a lot to explain. But yes, it works. You can set boundaries. Uh wow, it's wow, I could go on for hours about this stuff. But because it's a lot to try and explain, um to quickly say, consciousness is all, and you're absolutely right. Consciousness is a dimension of itself. Consciousness created um, all things of what we see in the Hindu religion. See, I don't like to call consciousness God. I kind of keep creator gods, which to me are physical beings, and source energy, which is the creator of all things. And I like to keep them separate. And a good religion for that, after me examining religions, is the Hindu religions, because they say there are the physical star beings, which are the creator gods. But above them is what's called Brahman. And Brahman is the energy source from which all matter comes. Well, the Brahman is consciousness itself as well. So if you could go back to the beginning of the universe and just imagine that all of these different quantum fields are existing, and in some of these quantum fields, you have particles, and particles can start being formed into atoms and into molecules and then into cells and what have you. So consciousness, source, recognizes this and begins creating all matter. So source is creating all of it, but then source, imagine it as saying, well, source wants to now examine this dimension of matter from within the dimension, rather than source being outside of it, observing it. It wants to observe it from within the dimension. So think of source as creating biological entities, uh, animals, other beings more advanced than us, but us as well. So that we now have source consciousness within us as the main driving force. So this is the life we are before we come into the body, and it is the life we are after the body. We are source consciousness. However, the source creates beings like us who become self-aware because our brains start kicking in at a young age. And at that young age, we start losing our connection to the full consciousness we are at birth. And we start to become indoctrinated, as you said, citizen, into the trauma of this reality. So our cognitive brains begin working, and we start deducing, we start evaluating, we start measuring, we start calculating. The more we do this, our true consciousness subsides and becomes our subconscious, what we call our subconscious. And our cognitive mind, or our brain, and the thinking that it is capable of, it comes out into the forefront. And this is what we base the persona. We create these personas based off of our observation of the reality. So we think that what we are is these physical bodies existing in a reality, which is true. But if you go deeper into it, you can say, well, it's really source energy, source consciousness that is the main consciousness in each of us, but it is getting to observe the reality that it created through individual portals, which is all of us. Each one of our perceptions, being different from one another, allows source consciousness all of these different perceptions of the same reality, because we're all capable of processing it differently. If that makes sense. So it's almost like source consciousness is observing the reality it created through us, to allow us to exist within that reality, to observe it from within rather than outside of it. I don't know if that really makes sense. I'm trying to really condense this into a condensed explanation of it.
Well, I mean, it makes sense as much as it can. I think you're trying to explain the wisdom of eternity here. So in the best way that it can make sense. Yeah, I think you did a great job. And I've never heard it put like that. Almost like observing from within, like jumping into the video game and being the character as opposed to having that bird's eye view and playing the game. So yeah, it's just kind of paradoxes all the way down. I think you did a great job explaining it though.
I want to ask all of you, as my family, my spiritual family, Have you struggled with being employed?
Myself personally, no. I've never struggled with employment. Um, no, not at all.
Others?
Well, I was a nurse, but then when I realized that the plants were the healers, then I left the field to explore holistic healing and spiritual healing. So I'm doing that right now, but I do have to trust creator to bring me people.
No, I haven't really. I mean, I've had, like health struggles that were unrelated to employment, but the employment per se, no, because it's just kind of like you have to have your feet in both worlds, and I kind of refuse to just let this world like kick my ass entirely. So I kind of kept going in that realm. I will say, because Cosmic and I've known him for a long time, and we did a healing session recently, and I'm always pretty skeptical on these sorts of things. But it was profound, and it was deeply impactful and meaningful. And I know she doesn't self promote as much, so I'm going to do it for her. Please check out her website. I think it's on her Twitter page, maybe, but it's Quantum Healing Code. Codes or code singular?
It's code.
Code. Okay, Quantum Healing Code. Yeah, check it out and see what she offers, because it's alchemy or amalgamation of all these different experiences, like being an RN and entity releasing and plant medicine, all kinds of stuff all rolled into one. That it's a unique healing thing, which is another reason why. Oh
Okay.
yeah, just last point here. Science has trouble with this because it's not. These types of people aren't reproducible. We can't distill cosmic down into something that we can mass produce and distribute to everyone. A lot of it is n equals one. And so, in that sense, to me, you have to listen to your intuition. If you get a benefit and your intuition gives you two thumbs up, it's like that's good for you. So anyway, I'm tooting her horn for her. Check her out. And yeah, what were you gonna say, Nakima?
Yeah, what I was going to say is because I want to. Why I asked that is because I was always on top of my class to finish. I got a very good job immediately after university. I went to university in Germany. Then I got a job in the airline, but I felt like I would die if 1 year down, I felt like I was going to die if I continued. I was in Europe, but then I felt this pull. I have to go back home. I have to go back to Africa. I have to go back. I have to go back. So it was insane. And I left the job. So when I went back, that's when like I was getting all this information, like I'm in the priesthood. I can't be working because the priesthood in any culture is the top, it's the top of the top. So you like cosmic energies, like people come to you. So who are you going to go to? So I was saying, okay, what you're telling me, I hear, I understand, but it doesn't exist. The priesthood was disbanded. We all have these, bishops and what. So how? Why did you allow me to go to school if you knew I wasn't going to get employed? They said you cannot, because your representation is at that level. Kings would be coming to you to speak to you. So who are you going to take orders? I struggled until I engaged them. I said, if you don't want me to work, I'm not used. I went to school. Provide that money. I don't know if you are into miracle making. Just make that money and put it on. And that's why I told you, for me, I engage. I engage. I said, give me that money. I'm not going to be a pauper. And then, in the spiritual realm, you're telling me I'm at this high elevation and what? Do you know what happened? I got a job 2 months later, a job that didn't exist. The company was being queried, and they paid me for 3 years as I was sitting at home. Now, I'm just telling you that my reality is insane. Because in this realm, we don't have to be fearful. Because if you've called me, I have all this knowledge. I'm going to pass it on. And previously, prophets, like, in the Bible, people would flock to them to listen to this wisdom. They no longer do it. I was informing my spiritual energy and world and telling them, please come to power with the reality of what's happening to us. I exist in 2002. I'm in 2006. So what are you telling me? That how? My reality is different in this physical realm. So how do I merge the two? And when that phase finished, 3 years, I dreamt like I saw these entities falling from heaven, seeking me out, going to every house. And that's when I entered politics, because in politics, I was like the boss. People would come to me still for wisdom as a councillor at the district first. Then I was elected as member of parliament for 15 years. I've just left it. Now, I'm just asking, how do you merge your reality with your spiritual reality? I can understand cosmic, because she was a healer, authentically, not in the science field. And that's why she was pulled out. So I wanted to hear, how does your spiritual purpose, your higher purpose, your cosmic purpose, how do you merge it with your physical reality? And how do you balance that? I want to I want to hear that.
I'll share with you a little bit in that regard. So I explained earlier the things that I'm going through right now, but I'll share with you a story. So I was working in construction, and as I was going through this experience and speaking with these angelic beings and receiving so much knowledge and stuff, I was on a job site and I was at a man's home. And he came out, and for whatever reason, began talking about God. So I returned the conversation. And this man invited me in his house. He's like, "Come in here for a minute. I want to hear more about this, about what you're talking about." Um, so he brings me in and he sits me down. I'm in like construction. I'm in work clothes. This man he opens a pizza box and puts it on a sofa. He's like, "Please, brother, sit down, sit down. I'm very interested in this." And he's saying like, it turns out he was Muslim, and we spoke maybe about 10 minutes. And something he said to me, he goes, "Joseph," he says, "you have to stop working." And I said, "Why do you say this?" He said, "Well, because God has called upon you um, as a messenger, and you have to do this." He said, "You can't do it properly when you're putting all your time into this job." And I laughed at that man at the time. And I said, "Well, this is easy for you to say, but when you have a wife and a mortgage and a family to take care of, this is how I earn a living. Like, I can't give up my job." And it was something he said to me, and it sticks with me, which is why I'm mentioning it. He says, "Do the work that you were asked to do, and God will provide for you. Things will be provided for you, but you have to step into it and you have to be who you're supposed to be, and you can't shy away from it." And now, to add on a little bit to that, when I was in direct communication and I was receiving all of this information, I was told specifically, "You're not allowed to profit off of this information." And that meant financially. And when I asked or inquired why, it has to do with intention and to keep my intentions pure. So with that, I was like, okay, so I can't write a book about this. I can't, right? I just have to share this information willingly with others, and do it selflessly. Um, However, there's been talk, something that may be in the works, where there could be some monetary value. And if that monetary value arises, I would be allowed, I feel I would be allowed. I was talking to other spiritual people, and they were like, well, you're not profiting. If you were to take out from a money's being made, if you were to take out a living expense, right, your food and shelter, your basic needs, I think that would be allowable. But any other monies, I would have to give it away, right? And this is the path that I'm walking because it's it's sort of I know it may sound weird to people, but as I said, I've walked away from $100,000 a year job and security and everything to follow this spiritual path because it's just I'm being called to it and I can't deny it. And I'm not going to try to hang on to a fictitious reality that's based on greed and selfish and monetary value. I often look at the world. I look at, tribes people around the world. There's some very poor tribes still around the world, but these are spiritual people and these are happy people. And I look at, you could look at a native tribe and still living in the Amazon jungle. And you could say, well, these people are poor and they have nothing. Look at the videos of them. They're laughing, they're dancing, right? They're singing, they're loving each other. They have a family unit, right? They have more than what a lot of other people have. A lot of other people don't have that community connection. But these tribes people, these very simple tribes people, they have that. While the rest of the world is out trying to get a bigger car, trying to get a bigger house, right? It's the intention of who we all are, I think. So I really have no interest in like the monetary system, in possessions anymore, right? I just really feel like so long as I have shelter and clothing and food, like I'm good. I don't need beyond that. I'm happy. I'm content in life, and I'm finding more of this, feeling content the further into this spiritual realm that I'm going, and the more I'm releasing myself from the physical world. Like it just seems, I don't know. I can't go backwards anymore. I'm just an adventurous type. I want to see where this boat's leading to. You know what I'm saying? I'm an adventurer. And I'm saying, no, something's guiding me over this way. It may be an unknown. I could be scared about it. That fear would make me say, oh, I don't want to lose my job. Oh, I'm fearful of trying this. Oh, I'm fearful of, or we have to just jump into it. And I'm just the adventurous type. I'm just like, hey, I'm just along in this life. I'm just along for the ride. Right. So I'm willing to I'll be honest with you all. If a UFO came down right now, the star people I was talking to, if they come down and say, okay, Joseph, it's time to go, I'm going on that ride too. Right. Because I'm adventurous. I'm like, okay, bring me up there. Show me what's up there. Right. I want to experience more of the truth of what is, because just, from my experience, I gained a lot. And what it mostly says to me is that there's more truth out there than what we've all been led to believe, or like what I've grown up believing as truth or reality. My eyes were opened up to otherworldly things, and it's just like, wow, like there's so much more, right? So I'm an adventurer, and I'm like, yeah, I'm just here to explore all the things, and if part of that is surrendering my physical self to the physical reality and the greed and the selfishness and the perception of self, and it's about letting go of that, like that's the process I'm kind of going through right now.
Well, like I said, I've always lived my spiritual purpose. And because I confronted it, everything that I have, my income, what is paid to me, and that's why I have a very large NGO in Africa. It's in Eswatini, it's in Mali, it's in Uganda. And I've always been the major donor to it, because I would get money as a member of parliament. It was actually in Africa, it's much more than, what else could do. Maybe you'd get maybe an equivalent of something like $10,000 in Africa. But I would donate most of it to the nonprofit, which I was asked. They said, your papa's there, you're going to be in parliament, but we want you to take care of children, children, children. And they would always repeat this, children, children. That's why I have a nonprofit. Here I use my spiritual name, and I can only, like I say, we have to be discerning and safe, because I'm a very known person in my region at a political level. And here I use my spiritual name, my spiritual deity name, and all that. But when I'm sharing with you, I'll just say this. When you find your purpose, the provision will come to you. The provision will follow the purpose. The purpose does not follow provision. Provision will always follow purpose. And until we are confident in that, right now, since for 2 years, I've not been working. Okay, it was time to leave that, because my spirituals, I said, okay, now we are done with this. Okay, do you wait for the next phase? Of course, this phase has not been easy, because even as people who walk in the spirit, I struggled a lot with my husband, because he loves Islam so much. And I was always telling him, that's not my reality. That's not it. And of course, like about 5 years ago, he realized he could not conform me to Islam. And I tell him, I don't want our children to be stuck in religion. And because of my gift, I was always the provider. I would actually give all the money to my husband, whatever he would want to do. Because it was more trying to tell him, like, it's not about it. Look at what my purpose is providing for us. And it's not like I'm greedy around that. But when these people who are into religion, oh my God, they've been programmed. Even if they see something, they'd rather deny it in order to conform to what has been indoctrinated in them. And my husband would always say, yes, I know I've seen a lot of things that are unexpected with you, but for me, I cannot deviate from Islam. How would people see me, the whole family and everything? No. Even when I see what you see, I know that you've told me things and I've seen them come to us. I cannot leave Islam. Definitely. In that purpose, of course, I've gone through a divorce. I'm still going through a divorce with him. But like I said, even the struggle is real to people who can live with you. I think for men, it's a bit easier, that maybe the women can submit a bit. But women who are cold, it's tough for men to hang around us. It's like they want to know everything. And you say, well, I also don't know. Tomorrow I may get a different message. But that message is not harmful. It's not harmful to us. It's beneficial. But it's because it's unknown. I think across the continent, I've seen that most people who are called at the spiritual level, the partners, especially men, are intimidated by that spiritual force within you. And, if they want to conform, so it would be also a gift to find somebody who would accept you for who you are, that you're not the norm. And for me, being my authentic self is like breathing. Without it, I would not breathe. And like I said, 2 years, but like I said, for me, provision always follows me. Whether it's for my children who are now the last born is in high school. I'm not a very young woman. I'm making 50 next year. So I've lived life. My children are 3 at university. I have 4, 3 at university. And they're right now, I'm just getting like my pension from Parliament, and you know what? I'm living, but now this is my full-time job, engaging in such spaces. Like sharing, getting to know the community that's like me. Thank you, people.
Thank you. I love you so much. I'm so I'm so grateful. I just feel like all of our hearts are really happy and thankful right now. Mental health, did you want to share something?
And we're kind of putting you on the spot. We can come back to you. There's a mic button in the bottom left corner of the screen. We can get Joseph's comment, and then if you want to respond mental health before we shut the room down, please do. But yeah, go ahead, Joseph.
Yeah, actually, this is going back to a question you had asked, Citizen, about protecting ourselves. Because Cosmic talks about that a lot. And you had asked me a question, and I kind of got sidetracked, but I want to get back to that. So, when doing a meditation, you are opening yourself up, and that's the purpose. You're allowing yourself to you're kind of shutting down the cognitive, and you're opening up the subconscious to be able to go and explore. When you're in this state, if it's like just having an open doorway, and just the same as how there are good people and there are bad people, there can be good spirits and there could be also bad spirits. So when you just open yourself up unknowingly, you could unknowingly be inviting bad spirits to come through that open door. So I always do set affirmations, exactly what Cosmic talks about, where before going into the meditation and opening myself up, as I'm opening myself, I am affirming, and I'm saying that I am only opening myself up to love and to light and of good intention and pure intention, and that anything of low vibrations is not welcome, and I do not welcome it. I have had a few cases also of sleep paralysis. Um, those were kind of a negative vibration thing that happened, and I felt like I was being attacked. And one thing I will say is just understanding spirit and stuff, and I'll refer to the spirit of Christ. I'm not going to talk too much about religion, the religious aspect of it, but Christ consciousness, Christ spirit, the spirit of Christ. When I felt I was being attacked in this sleep paralysis, I was very aware something was happening and I didn't like it. And in my mind, I called out for Christ and I said, please help me. And everything stopped immediately. So it's almost like if like a bad spirit or something comes into you, you can, if you have control of your consciousness, think of that. Think of something positive like the spirit of Christ, right? Because these are higher vibrational spirits. They'll come in and they'll chase them away. They will help you. I've experienced it. So yeah, I just wanted to throw that in there as well. And Nakayima, what you were saying about the religions, I have a take on religions as well. I love religious people, and I love them because they are open-minded to the possibility of something else. Um, I don't care so much about the religion themselves and the way they indoctrinate people. It's sort of like how you were saying about your husband saying, well, I couldn't be like that because it goes against Islam. And this is the problem that I see with religious people. And even like you have your two biggest teachers, which is Muhammad and Jesus. And the foundation of their teaching was love and respect all people, love and respect all others. Yeah, and this is the foundation of all religions, but that's not what they practice, is it? Because if you want to be loved and respected by Christians, well, you better be willing to call yourself a Christian and follow their narrative. And don't you dare veer away from that narrative. Because if so, well, now you're not a Christian. So their actions are contradictions of the fundamentals of their own teachings, which is love and respect all others. So that's just my retake. Like, I love religious people, but I don't so much love the religions and what the religions are teaching the people.
Yeah, that's a really good point. When I lived in Costa Rica is when I emerged from heavy religious upbringing, beliefs and behaviors, I guess, practices, and sort of realized the common golden thread of, natural law and love, and like how everything can be unified. And so as I was sort of detoxing from the religious aspect of our spiritual experience here, but yet figuring out how to respect and love everyone who was choosing to have the experience that we call religion in different organized ways or even their own ways, I realized that a lot of people were so terrified of the idea of like being connected to creator and being connected to everyone without the need for the organization part, the way it was being presented in churches and books and things. They were so terrified that they would rather, burn you at the stake and ostracize you and all this business than to try to see it, outside of the current way it was being presented. And when I realized that that was starting to happen to me, because I was the main one in Bible studies who would be asking the questions and questioning the questions, and um like I did it very respectfully, but it scared people. And when I really started asking the ultimate questions, is when I started to see how afraid people were, even though they didn't think they were. And I had to like do my own shadow work around fear of rejection or fear of being misunderstood, fear of not presenting things the way I intended to help sort of like bridge the gap between everybody. And that's why before we moved back to the States, I decided that I didn't want to present to our family of origin our journey the way that I didn't want to present it like really out in the open, because I come from a religious background and other people in my life were very religious, and I used to be really involved in all that. And so I decided to get centered and find a way to present my journey in a way that would invite people to feel safe and not judged. Not that I was saying, like, hey, I've done some research and this is why I'm not following, this religion anymore. I didn't want it to be a divisive thing. So I practiced finding ways to bridge the gap and like create a language that was a translation between two worlds. And that sort of goes into this whole topic here today, is that there is a language that we can speak that causes people to feel that we aren't afraid and that we love them and that we're not judging anything about their journey. And I think that I just I guess I'm proud of all of us, because I think we're all doing that in our own ways right here, right now. And we have been doing it, and it is the way, and it's beautiful, and it's actually less scary than we thought. So I'm really proud of all of us. I love what happened today. I love what's going to be happening. Thank you to everybody who's in the room. Thank you to everybody who's going to listen later. Yeah, I don't know if anyone has any final comments or remarks, but I just want to say thank you to everybody.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who offered their wisdom here. I've been on this journey from 2017 when I felt like I felt numb to everything. Every time I would eat food, it felt like I was eating dirt. I was so detached from my body. Everything looked like I was in a movie set. Everything didn't seem real anymore. Um, it has felt better now since 2017. But my monkey mind was crazy to the point where I couldn't even go to class. I'd have to sit meditating and listening to like calming water sounds to just calm it. And I was a very academia focused kid, like go getter. But all that steam just left my body and I didn't have any more life force. I was like, I burnt myself out. And I started realizing, like, man, I'm just living this life for my family, for how others are going to look at me. I'm not really feeding my soul. So I would apply to these jobs, send 100 applications, not even one would stick. And then I ended up moving and helping my uncle with his twin babies. He had just had babies and they needed help. And I did that for like a year. And then after that, I did caregiving, which also felt like that's the moment I saw someone's soul leave their body for the first time. And then it awakened me to like, holy crap, I don't know when I'm going to die. I don't know when my loved ones are going to die. So I mean, there and there, I was like, you know what, this job is not doing anything for me. I quit with nothing, no backup, anything. But I just felt I was already depressed and dark within, and this job kept like pulling me down because I knew all these people were in hospice, and it was just a matter of time for them to die. So it was so much heaviness, and I needed lightness. Short, I ended up not getting my support. I had my employment thing going on to just cushion until I figure out where I was gonna go. I ended up living in my car. But it was the best gift ever because in that moment, I got to meet God. I got to meet my higher self. I got to surrender to to not try to control anything around me, to just be and speak life into creation. And that it's always me. It's always been me who gets in front of myself because we are limitless. We can create anything. And when we have mental arguments, we love the suffering. We love creating blockages for ourselves because, we enjoy it. There's a part of us that enjoys it. And I got to meet the darkest parts of me, even the parts that are shameful, the parts that are fearful about, we all have fears that linger within us. And sometimes we let our consciousness just rest on the fear, on the dark thoughts, instead of focusing on the light stuff. But sometimes, you've been having the dark night of the soul for so long. Being in the darkness is so familiar, you forgot what lightness is like. But so right now I'm being called. It's just a knowing and intuition nudge to serve women specifically who are in their dark spot and be their companion whilst they find their light out of the tunnel. Because it's not about telling them what to do, it's reflecting back the light and saying, hey, I know, I understand, I've been there, but it does get better. And let's listen to your heart, let's listen to your soul for the medicine within. But yeah, I wanted to say that I know the lady was speaking earlier about being unemployed. Yeah, I find it hard to work for anybody because I feel like, man, I sense that everybody's behind because everybody's playing sport, everybody's playing to each other's egos instead of like letting everyone's brilliance come to shine. And I'm not going to lie on a resume that I don't know what I'm talking about. I might be young, I might not have experience, but I know what I bring to the table. And of course, we're taught to limit ourselves, our worth to like, small change. Well, it's okay. That's what it is. But yeah, I felt like my soul, my true identity wouldn't thrive in a social construct like that. And that's why I find it hard to work for anybody. But I understand the need for humility and to learn because I don't know everything. And right now I'm working, I enjoy my job. It doesn't pay much, but I know that I'm gaining so much mentorship from somebody who succeeded in A, B, C, D, Y. And I respect that. You know, it might be challenging, it might be a little uncomfortable, but I know I'm only here for a short change, so I might make the most of it. But yeah, that was my rumble. Thank you so much, Cosmic and everyone else.
Yeah, that's not a ramble. That was beautiful. I love you and I'm thankful that you shared all of that. And I'm really proud of you for what you're doing. And I pray that that you would be provided for in all the ways that you need to be.
Thank you.
Hey, if I could add some words of encouragement for everybody before you shut down the space. Um, it's in those darkest times, I think, is when we truly find ourselves, when we hit that rock bottom. That's when we start really releasing the ego self, and we start really reflecting on what truly matters. And it's during those times that we start to rise up out of that darkness. And for people who have been spiritually enlightened, and you've seen more, and you've experienced like what other people haven't. Just to encourage you, don't be afraid of speaking that and sharing it. And a lot of people, when it comes to ego, it's okay to be yourself, and it's okay to be your authentic self. And if you've had an experience, and if you gained insight or wisdom, please share it. And don't think about, the right people are going to hear it, and they're not going to think that you're being egotistical, right? The wrong people, it's going to bruise their ego, because it's not their experience. And it could be a jealousy and envious, and they're going to try to tear you down. They're going to be the one saying, "Oh, this person thinks they're this and they think they're that." And they're going to try to influence other people's perceptions of you and what you're speaking. But don't let it tear you down. That's that ego trap, right? So just a word of encouragement for people, like, as we're coming into our authentic selves, let's be those authentic selves, and don't worry. um the right people are going to vibrate with you, and the the people not at that vibration, they're not going to, right? And that's just the reality. But it can't allow us to it can't force us to stop being who we are and who we're meant to be here in spaces like this, sharing our experiences with one another. So I just wanted to offer those words of encouragement to, continue being our authentic selves.
Exactly. That's beautiful. I'm glad you said all that. And it's kind of like going back to like the eagle and the fish thing. Like, we can't expect fish to really comprehend flying in the air because they fly in the water. And it's just something different. And we can respect one another's journeys and not be upset that we won't always fully relate on all the same pages. And if you think about it, if all the animals in the world were just eagles flying around, we'd have like a billion eagles and no other cool animals. And it's important for us to have variety. It's important for everybody to have their own journey and their own experience. And in that way, it's important for not everybody to relate or resonate, because it creates this diversity that is probably a part of a much bigger story that's probably very meaningful.
Yes, that was beautifully said. And like, with the diversity, like, we are all diverse, and up until now, that diversity has been used as a weapon against us all, to keep us all separate, and that diversity has always been pointed out to us in a negative fashion. uh, Myself, I see the diversity of all of us as a gift, because that is what forms the collective of all of us combined. I wouldn't be who I am if it wasn't for all of you, right? It's like you're saying, I would just be an eagle and you would all be eagles, and we would just all be the same, but it's the diversity of us all that's so beautiful. It's what makes us. I love that, how you said that. Anyhow, with that, I have to cut out because I have to do some more cleaning and stuff before this house gets showed tonight. But I love you all in this space, and I hope everything works well with whatever you're doing today. I hope you just receive blessings upon blessings.
Yes, we love you too. And I think this is a great place to just wrap the show. But we'll do this hopefully every Thursday, a safe soul space for people to share their stories and feel seen and heard, and for us to find our friends and family. So I love you all, and I'm looking forward to next week.